Chapter 172. After Zhang Yan asked about the method of yin-yang flying knife, he stored Bai Gonghao's original soul into a piece of jade. In the future, he would have to deal with the disciples of Chongyue Zhenguan, so this person was still useful. If he was willing to cooperate, he would not mind sending him to reincarnation. Then, he sat on the mountain ridge and began to refine the Dragon Kingdom ship. Bai Gonghao did not return, which caused panic among the disciples of Chongyue Zhenguan. That night, except for one disciple who stayed on the island to investigate the specific situation, the rest left in a hurry. Obviously, they were either running for their lives or calling for reinforcements. The fighting on the mountain ridge was naturally not heard by the other cultivators on the island. Especially Bai Gonghao, a cultivator who had been running wild in the sea for a long time. He had offended many people, so his every move was watched by many people. At this time, when they saw that he was suspected to have been killed, they were excited with fear. This news quickly spread throughout the island, and everyone was guessing who the other party was. Near dawn, two escape lights, one red and one green, flew up the mountain ridge and landed in front of Zhang Yan. Two cultivators appeared. One of them was a middle-aged Taoist in a red robe with a horsetail whisk in his hand. This person had thick lips, a flat nose, a protruding forehead, and a strange appearance. There was a black falcon on his shoulder. Its fierce eyes flashed, its claws were sharp, and its beak was sharp. It looked extremely fierce. The other person was a young cultivator in a Taoist robe with a yellow gourd hanging on his waist. There was a slight smile on his face, but his eyes were long and narrow, with light flashing in them. His chin was slightly sharp, which made people feel a little more gloomy when looking at him. The two people saw Zhang Yan sitting there with a calm expression. There was a black box in front of him, but they did not know what it was. The young cultivator stepped forward and cupped his hands. I am Chu Jiu from Taihao School. I am rather presumptuous to visit so late at night. How should I address you? Zhang Yan's expression changed slightly, and he looked at the other party. He was actually a disciple of Taihao School. The Taihao School was also one of the top 10 schools in the Celestial Sect of Wonders, but even so, it was not enough to attract his attention. However, among the 3 ingredients for the building gold pill, one of them was called One Breath Ganoderma. The Taihao School had planted quite a few top-grade herbs in their school. Since they knew that treasuring a jade ring would arouse the envy of others, every year, they would take out some for their disciples to collect. If his trip to Donghai went smoothly, his next trip would be to Donghai. Therefore, he didn't want to be rude. He stood up and politely returned the greeting, I am Zhang Yan from Qinsang School. Nice to meet you, fellow Taoist. Chu Jiu exclaimed. So it's a fellow Taoist from Qinsang School. Initially, the middle-aged Taoist was squinting his eyes at the side with an indifferent look on his face. However, when he heard the name, he could not help but be surprised. He cupped his hands at the middle-aged Taoist and said seriously, I'm Qiu Ju from Nanhua faction. However, his voice was stiff, like wood and stone colliding. It was extremely uncomfortable to hear. Chu Jiu laughed, fellow Taoist Zhang, please don't take it to heart. Fellow Taoist Qiu from Nanhua faction only likes to deal with spiritual birds and is not good with words. It's not that he's rude to you. Zhang Yan naturally would not dwell on these small details. He smiled and said, it's nothing. I wonder why the two of you have come in the middle of the night. Chu Jiu glanced at Zhang Yan and said, I heard that you had a conflict with a disciple from Chongyue Zhenguan. Later on, that Bai Gonghao even came looking for you. This person has always been hostile to the disciples of the 10 sects of Celestial Sect of Wonders. No less than 3 of the disciples that I sent to Donghai died at his hands. I heard that he suffered a setback today, but I don't know which expert made him an enemy. Because of his actions, we wanted to pay you a visit and see if we can help you. He looked around and asked, I wonder how this Bai Gonghao is doing. Zhang Yan was slightly surprised. If these two really wanted to help, they wouldn't have waited until now. They were just being polite. He said calmly, this person has been killed by me. What? Chu Jiu and Qiu Ju were both shocked. Bei Gonghao had a few conflicts with them on this island, but this person relied on the sharpness of the Liuan Yin Yang flying dagger. Even if the two of them attacked together, they couldn't beat this person. Fortunately, they also had a few life-saving methods, so the other party was a little cautious. At least they didn't lose their lives. Originally, they thought that Bei Gonghao would at most leave after being defeated. After they found out, they might go and find trouble with him. But now that they heard that Bei Gonghao was killed by Zhang Yan, they were extremely shocked. They looked at each other. Chu Jiu thought to himself that this Zhang Yan actually had such strength. His heart moved, but he had another idea. He thought to himself, I originally wanted to rope this person in, but I didn't expect him to be a disciple of the Qinsang school. If I can rope him in, I'll have a better chance of doing that thing. But I don't have a clear relationship with him, so I don't know how to ask. He thought for a while, then suddenly had an idea. He sighed deliberately and said, Senior Zhang has killed Bei Gonghao this time, which is very satisfying. But Senior Zhang, you have to be careful. This Bei Gonghao is an elder of the Chongyuzhen Guan. If you kill him, they will definitely take revenge. However, the 10 sects of the Celestial Sect of Wonders are united, so we won't just stand by and watch. Senior Qiu, don't you think so? After he finished speaking, he turned his head and gave a look. Although Qiu Ju looked dull, he was very smart. He didn't show any expression on his face and said, of course. Zhang Yan smiled and said, I will leave this place at dawn and go to the outer sea. In this vast ocean, even if a disciple of the Chongyuzhen Guan wants to find me, it's easier said than done. You don't have to worry about it. Chu Jiu was stunned and said, so Senior Zhang is leaving this place at dawn? His eyes flickered and said, please forgive me for asking. Did Senior Zhang come here on an ordinary boat? In his opinion, if someone had a big boat, they didn't need to stay on Sealed Prayer Island. They could directly fly to the outer sea and he could do something about it. Zhang Yan looked at him and said, that's right. Hearing this, Chu Jiu laughed, the outer sea is windy and turbulent, and ferocious beasts are rampant. Ordinary boats can't travel far. Senior Zhang, I have a mysterious snake 9 orifices big boat. It can fly across the huge ocean and it can easily carry hundreds of people. Senior Zhang, why don't you go out to sea with us? Zhang Yan looked at Chu Jiu with a smile that didn't look like a smile and said, Comrade Chu, we're all cultivators of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. Chu Jiu was seen through, but he didn't feel awkward. Instead, he laughed and said, Senior Zhang saw through my little thoughts. Hee, speaking of which, this matter is related to you. Since you're here, I'm sure you've heard about Tao Zhenhong opening a sect in the outer sea. Although Zhang Yan was in the cabin that day, he heard the conversation between Senior Kai and Lady Dan very clearly. He knew about this matter, so he nodded and said, of course I know. Chu Jiu said in a deep voice, Tao Zhenhong has 4 outstanding disciples. One of them is called Guo Lai. He has a cultivation of the minor Oris core stage. He once said that when his master opens a sect, if any of the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders dare to take a step into the East Sea, he will kill them. He's a man of his word. A few days ago, I heard that he tried to kill disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. That's why Senior Qiu and I want to invite a few of our fellow cultivators to travel together on Sealed Prayer Island. If possible, we'll try to kill him. At this moment, Qiu Ju from the Nanhua sect suddenly said, if Senior is willing, I'm willing to give you a piece of celestial iron. Zhang Yan squinted his eyes. Celestial iron? This must be the item that Senior Kai mentioned that fell from the sky. He didn't expect Qiu Ju to have it too. If he could find a good cultivator to forge this item, he would be able to forge a magic treasure. He pondered in his heart. This Guo Lai sounded like a good cultivator. If it was any other time, he would want to meet him. However, Chu Jiu's words were not true. No matter how arrogant Guo Lai was, he wouldn't dare to offend the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Chu Jiu must have deliberately twisted his words to arouse his hatred for a common enemy. He didn't care about all this. However, he was going to retrieve the 4 marquee water. If he agreed to the 2 of them, he couldn't leave halfway. If Guo Lai didn't come, was he going to wait for another day? That's why he rejected. I'm sorry, I have other matters to attend to. I'm afraid I can't agree to it. Seeing that he rejected so firmly, Chu Jiu's lips moved a few times. He could only cup his hands and say coldly, if that's the case, then forget it. We'll take our leave. Zhang Yan cupped his hands and said, I won't see you out. Seeing that the 2 of them turned into 2 streaks of light and left, he sat down and continued to refine the Dragon Nation ship. However, this time, when he exhaled a mouthful of spiritual qi, he found that the black ship in front of him suddenly released countless rays of bright light, as if something was about to come out. He couldn't help but feel happy. He was finally going to refine the first layer of the weapon restriction. Chu Jiu and Qiu Ju returned to the foot of the mountain. Chu Jiu's face was gloomy as he said hatefully, what a pity. I wanted to drag this Zhang Yan down with me to deal with that Guo Lai. I didn't expect him to be so calm. Qiu Ju said, he's a smart person. How could he be so easily fooled? Let's wait a few more days. It won't be too late for us to leave when our senior uncles arrive. Chu Jiu smiled coldly and said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. I have a plan to prevent Guo Meng from coming to us. Qiu Ju asked in surprise, what plan? Chu Jiu chuckled and said, since this Zhang Yan doesn't want to give us face, why don't we make him suffer a little? We can spread the news that this Zhang Yan from Qinsang School can't stand Guo Meng's tyrannical behavior and wants to fight him. At this point, he smiled proudly and said, this Guo Meng has always been reckless and irritable. How can he hold himself back after hearing this? He'll definitely look for Zhang Yan. This way, he won't have time to care about us. When 2 tigers fight, one is bound to be injured. If he's killed, we can cut off one of Tao Zhenhong's arms without any effort. If he kills this Zhang Yan, haha, that's even better. This way, we can drag Qinsang School down with us. Qiu Ju was shocked. This Chu Jiu's plan was so vicious. Although this Zhang Yan was powerful, how could he fight against a small Jindan cultivator like Guo Lai? Chu Jiu said excitedly, there's no time to lose. While this Zhang Yan hasn't left the island yet, I'll send someone to keep an eye on him and see who he'll find to borrow the boat tomorrow. That way, we'll know where he'll go. When the time comes, we'll leak this information to Guo Lai. When the time comes, we'll definitely be able to escape. Just as he was laughing happily, he heard a tremor. Even the ground under his feet trembled. It was as if the entire island was shaking. He didn't know what had happened, but he saw Qiu Ju looking up in a daze. He also looked up and couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Chapter 173. A small mountain-like flying ship was suspended above the ridge of the mountain. It had a length of more than 4,000 feet. If one stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up, it would almost block half of the sky. On the boat's body, there was a 6-story treasure pavilion lying horizontally on the boat's body. On the eaves of the 4 corners hung warning bells of gold and copper, complemented by bright pearls and precious stones. 36 dragon-climbing short stakes poked their heads out from the side of the boat, glaring angrily and raising their beards. The largest flying ship that Chu Jiu and Qiu Ju had seen was only 300 meters long, which was already extremely huge. He had never seen such a large ocean boat, almost comparable to the towering cloud watchtower that the Yuanying cultivators rode. He was stunned on the spot. However, as soon as the ship appeared, it immediately concealed itself. Obviously, it had been taken by the other party. From the beginning to the end, it had only been a breath or two of time. Many people only felt the ground beneath their feet shake, but when they looked around, they didn't notice anything unusual. A rare look of envy appeared on Qiu Ju's face as he sighed, this person actually has such a huge boat. Even if Guo Lai really wanted to find trouble with him, he would probably be able to defend for a long time with the restriction on the boat. When Chujio heard this, he was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. Chiu was baffled. Why are you laughing? If this senior marshal brother Zhang steers the boat and leaves at this moment, where will your plan go? Chujio smiled mysteriously and said, not necessarily. I've just thought of a way to make Guolai abandon us and follow this person. We can use this chance to escape. Chiu said in a muffled voice, although this Guolai is rash, he isn't someone we can easily manipulate. Chujio chuckled, if I let Lady Shan and Kai Chua sail my mysterious snake 9 orifices great sea boat out to sea, what do you think Guolai will do? Chiu said without even thinking, Guolai will definitely think that we are also on the boat, so he will chase after us. At this point, he frowned and said, if that's the case, we will not be able to escape. Although we can lure him away, won't we have no more boats to go out to sea? The corners of Chujio's mouth curled up into an enigmatic smile as he said, but when he finds out that the ones controlling this ship aren't the two of us, he'll definitely ask us where we are. I can take care of these two ladies in advance and tell them that we've left on fellow Taoist Zhang's ship. Guolai would definitely believe it. After he leaves, the two women will turn the ship around and return to this island to receive us. In this way, we can escape. By the time Guolai discovers the truth, it will be too late. Chiu pondered for a while and found that this method was really feasible. If Guolai knew about this, he would definitely turn around and chase after Zhang Yan in a hurry. He couldn't help but nod and say, this method is feasible. I'm just afraid that in a fit of rage, Guolai might. Chujio glanced at him and smiled. Senior marshal brother, don't worry. Guolai has always been proud of himself and has never killed a female cultivator. Otherwise, how would I dare to act like this? However, Chiu was still hesitating. He still had a worry that he didn't voice out. The mysterious snake's 9 orifices great sea boat was bought by him and Chujio, and they had spent a lot of spirit shells on it. If it was destroyed by Guolai, wouldn't they have lost everything? Chujio seemed to have seen through his thoughts and went forward to pat his shoulder. He said, Senior marshal brother, that immortal abode is rumored to appear in the near future. If we don't go early, I'm afraid those people will get there before us. Even if there is any risk, we have to give it a try. Chiu thought for a while and nodded. That's the only way. As soon as the Dragon Country Great Sea Boat revealed its true form, Zhang Yan knew that it was too eye-catching. Afraid that many people would covet it, he immediately put it away after the artifact restriction was opened. It turned into the hull of the boat and fell into his sleeve. Then, without waiting for daybreak, he wrapped Guchu Air in a profound light and left Sealed Prayer Island. After traveling for 100 miles, he saw the sun rising in the east, sprinkling down golden rays. There were fish leaping on the blue sea and white waves. It was already a vast sea and sky. Seeing that there was no one around, he released the Dragon Country Great Sea Boat. It stretched out its 4,000 feet long body and instantly raised a gust of wind. But even though the body of the boat was huge, it still looked like a lone boat in the vast sea. Zhang Yan strolled around the boat. Seeing that the 6 floors of the treasure pavilion could accommodate over 1,000 people, he arranged for Guchu Air to be on the lowest floor. He threw her a bottle of fasting pills and told her to cultivate well. Then, he came to the highest pavilion on the 6th floor. There were no furnishings here, so it seemed empty. But he didn't care. He picked up the restriction talisman and spat a mouthful of essence chi on it. With a wave of his hand, the 36 dragon climbing pillars that extended out of the side of the boat rotated with a rumble. A circle of light like the reflection of a lake instantly enveloped the boat, and it looked like the surface of the boat was covered with a layer of glazed flames. Zhang Yan nodded his head in satisfaction. This sea boat was originally the main boat of the flying boat's celestial market. Every piece of material had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times, and its sturdiness was no less than a magic treasure. With this layer of restriction, it could even resist some of the fiercest enemies. In addition, its speed wasn't slow either. Other than being too eye-catching, there were no other flaws. He went straight to the cloud couch and sat down. Then, he took out a book from his sleeve. The first few pages of the book recorded the origins of the various external medicines that Elder Yen used to condense his core. The water of the four marquises was also recorded. It was written, 300 miles southeast of Egret Island, there is a black mountain. Every 60 years, heavenly water will appear. It is called the Four Marquises, and its nature is extremely virtuous. Seeing this, Zhang Yan pondered in his heart, according to Elder Yen, this water will appear at the end of the year. It is now the 8th month. According to this book, after leaving Sealing Island, it will take about 1.5 months to reach here. But I wonder where that Xiao Han is now. If I run into him, it seems that there will be a dispute. He put the book back into his sleeve. After thinking for a moment, he took out a beautiful jade and called out, "Is fellow Taoist Beigong here?" Half of Beigong Hao's primordial spirit floated out of the jade. He cupped his hands and said, "What business do you have with me?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Last night, when you were fighting with me, you used a few drops of Ren Kue water essence qi. Where did you find them?" This Ren Kue water essence qi was exactly what was needed to cultivate the Taishian true light. Other than searching for external medicines, he went out to travel for these 5 essences. Beigong Hao didn't dare to not answer. He lowered his head and said, "Fellow Taoist, there is a life-gathering golden stone in my Chongyue True Temple. Every day, it will produce dozens of drops of Ren Kue water essence qi. Ordinary disciples can only get 1 or 2 drops. For an elder like me, I can get more than 10 drops. Besides the ones that were absorbed by fellow Taoist, I still have 5 drops in my sleeve." Hearing the source of this water essence qi, Zhang Yan shook his head. He didn't need to think about this life-gathering golden stone. This item should be the foundation of Chongyue True Temple. He wasn't arrogant enough to steal it. If he wanted to get enough water essence qi, he could only think of a way to get it from the disciples of Chongyue True Temple. Beigong Hao was old and experienced. How could he not see through his plan? He hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, if you want this water essence qi, there is actually a safer way." Zhang Yan glanced at him and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Beigong, please speak your mind." Beigong Hao hurriedly said, "If fellow Taoist has enough money, you can go to the celestial market set up by my Chongyue True Temple. My Chongyue True Temple relies on this market to trade for many magic treasures and medicines. Fellow Taoist only needs to ask around and you will know that I'm not lying." Zhang Yan stared at him for a moment and smiled faintly. He said, "It seems that even if fellow Taoist lost his physical body, you still don't want to get your fellow disciples involved." Hearing this, Beigong Hao smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, "That's not really the case. In fact, I did have evil thoughts in my heart because I wanted to drag a few of my fellow disciples down with me. However, even if I didn't mention this, fellow Taoist would find out sooner or later. I might as well say it now." However, Zhang Yan didn't comment. Although Beigong Hao's words were reasonable, he couldn't easily believe him. Especially when he was going to the territory of the Chongyue True Temple, he had to be even more careful. However, he didn't have the time right now, and it wasn't along the way. Even if he went there, he would have to wait until he obtained the 4 Marquises' water before making any plans. After the Chi Dragon ship traveled for more than 10 days, a strong wind suddenly blew in the sky without warning. Then, dark clouds covered the sky like lead, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Hurricanes swept across the sky, and heavy rain poured down. The raging waves rolled up dozens of feet high. For a moment, the sky and the sea were overturned, and thunder rumbled. The Chi Dragon ship sailed steadily in the storm that could destroy a country and a city. The 36 dragon-climbing pillars rumbled and rolled, and the restrictive lights on the ship's body flowed continuously. It didn't shake at all. The storm lasted for 10 days and 10 nights before it stopped. Fortunately, it was the Chi Dragon ship. If it was an ordinary ship, it would have fallen apart long ago. Zhang Yan stood in the pavilion and looked out into the sky. He thought to himself, "If I flew here alone, even if I could resist the power of heaven and earth, I'd probably be exhausted afterward. If an enemy came to find me, I'd be dead for sure on this boundless ocean. Seeing that the storm gradually stopped, the clouds dispersed, and the sun hung high in the sky, he walked out of the main pavilion. As far as his eyes could see, he saw a black phosphorus demon python rolling and twisting on the deck. The demon had the head of a python and the tail of a snake. There were no claws under its abdomen, only dozens of pairs of suckers that kept opening and closing. It looked extremely ferocious, and it let out a shrill cry as if it had been swept up by the wind and waves. When it saw Zhang Yan, it hissed and whipped its long tail that was as thick as a bucket. Zhang Yan smiled, and with a flick of his sleeve, a dozen drops of dark heavy water flew out and struck the strange python's head in unison, instantly knocking it out and causing it to fall weakly to the ground. This kind of demon that hadn't transformed yet could only bully people with its innate physique. It had no cultivation and was muddle-headed, so it could only bully ordinary people. In front of a cultivator like him, it was almost impossible for it to fight back. Zhang Yan thought to himself, I'm lacking servants on this ship. I might as well catch more demons and feed them form transformation pills. They can guard the ship for me, and I can cultivate with peace of mind. Thinking up to this point, he flicked a form transformation pill to the mouth of the strange python and left it alone. However, he didn't know that at this moment, 100 miles behind him, a huge bird rushed out of a dark cloud. On its back stood a strong man with a long upper body. He had thick eyebrows, a short beard, and a pair of sharp eyes. However, his clothes were tattered, and he looked extremely miserable. He wiped his mouth and spat out a mouthful of saliva, saying, Junior, you actually dared to walk through this whirlpool. Do you want to die? Your master Gua, was careless and almost died because of you. Chapter 174. The 6 imperial spirits descending. True art the burly man cursed, and the bird beneath him spread its wings. With a single flap, it traveled several dozen kilometers in the blink of an eye. After flapping its wings a few times, a black dot appeared in front of them. It was none other than the Chi Dragon Arc. The man was overjoyed. He stomped his feet and cursed, You stupid bird, why don't you work harder? The rock screeched in pain and exerted more strength, flapping its wings rapidly. Not long after, it flew past the Dragon Country's ship, circled half a circle, and flew high up in the air. The burly man shouted, Master Gua is here, the person inside, come out. His roar was so loud that it could be heard from dozens of miles away. Zhang Yan was sitting in the main pavilion refining his mystic light, so he naturally heard the voice clearly. He opened his eyes and flew out of the pavilion. He stood in the air and looked at the man. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, what can I do for you? The man saw Zhang Yan and was stunned at first. He then waved his hand and said, Master Gua is not here for you. Quickly call Chu Jiu and Qiu Ju out. Zhang Yan frowned slightly when he heard this. He couldn't help but think of a person based on this person's appearance and how he called himself. He then thought about the cause and effect before snorting lightly and guessing some clues. He cupped his hands and said, You must be fellow Taoist Guo Lai. The 2 people you spoke of aren't here. Guo Lai glared and said, Since you know who Master Gua is, don't try to hide it from me. Zhang Yan pointed at his feet and smiled. The restrictions on my Dragon Country's ship are extraordinary. Even if I let you attack it, it won't be damaged at all. If the 2 of them are really hiding here, why would I need to lie to you? Guo Lai was stunned. He could tell that Zhang Yan's words were true. Moreover, he had followed Zhang Yan all the way here, so he knew how powerful the restrictions on the ship were. His thick brows could not help but knit together. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something. He slapped his head in annoyance and said, Oh no, Master Gua, I have been tricked by those 2 young ladies. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he turned around and stared at Zhang Yan. Guo Lai couldn't help but roar with laughter when he saw Qin Shi carrying a slight smile on his face and not returning to the treasure pavilion, and he said, Forget it. Since I've already chased them all the way here, it looks like you're acquainted with them as well. So, how could I be willing to give up without a fight? He opened his hand, and a screen of light that was like mist and sunset rose up behind him. There seemed to be faint sounds of dragons and tigers roaring, cranes and apes crying within it. He stamped his foot on the ground, and a ball of white light fell from the screen of light. It rolled on the ground, and when it got up, it was a 3-meter-tall multicolored tiger. It had wings on its back and clouds under its feet. It roared at the sky and pounced on Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan was not flustered at all. He shouted, and a golden and red light shot out from his head. It tore through the atmosphere and fell down with a swoosh. The winged tiger did not know how powerful it was, and its claws clashed with the light. Several golden sparks were produced, and half of its front limbs were scraped off. It whimpered and rolled to the side. Its hind claws kept kicking, and just as it was about to escape, the golden and fiery light caught up and swept forward. It immediately scattered the tiger, and only a strand of essence escaped and returned to the light screen behind Guo Lai. Guo Lai saw this, but he was not angry at all. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised and said, "What a domineering light. Today, we'll have a good fight." He laughed out loud and pointed his finger forward. That strand of essence chi floated out and separated into a ball of mysterious light, which merged with the white ball of mysterious light. Then, a tiger roar was heard, and the huge tiger showed up again. Zhang Yan was slightly surprised, and he said, "Transformation of the essence, and the light as the body. Could it be Nanhua sect's art of controlling spirits?" Guo Lai chuckled, and said, "Friend, you have a good eye. My master, Tao Zhenhong, was originally from Nanhua sect, so we are of the same lineage." Guo Lai was Tao Zhenhong's eldest disciple, and his skills were passed down from Nanhua sect. This sect was very good at capturing demons, and they practiced the demon-subduing ring. With one set, any demon that was not strong enough could only be obedient and be used for their own use. And Guo Lai practiced the art of subduing 6 spirits. Every time a demon was killed, the demon's essence could be absorbed into the light, and they could use it for their own use. This art was different from other sections. Others could not control the light at will, but this sect relied on the essence to control the light, and it had its own consciousness. It knew how to avoid the strong and attack the weak, and look for opportunities to act, just like a living creature. As long as the essence was not destroyed, and the light was not extinguished, even if it was destroyed for a while, it could still be transformed again. Guo Lai was just testing Zhang Yan. If Zhang Yan's cultivation was too weak, he would not have the mood to be entangled here. But after some testing, he found that the light on Zhang Yan was extremely powerful, and it was enough to be his opponent. He was instantly delighted, and he did not care that he had just passed through the whirlpool and was already exhausted, and he forced himself to fight. He let out a loud roar and shook his body. The light screen behind him trembled and a green light suddenly shot out. Halfway through, the green light transformed into a huge green-scaled python that was hundreds of feet long. It opened its huge mouth and bit towards Zhang Yan as if it wanted to swallow him whole. Even before it arrived, a fishy and salty wind blew towards Zhang Yan. At the same time, the multicolored tiger also sneaked behind Zhang Yan, and its eyes flashed fiercely, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Zhang Yan saw the green-scaled python pressing down on him, but his expression was calm. A sword light shot out from between his brows, and with a spell, he shook the sword pellet and divided it into 4 pellets. One went straight for Guo Lai's face, one protected his body, one hung in the air, and the last one flew out in a rainbow light. After a few battles, he became more and more proficient in using the sword pellet. After the battle with Lu Gu, he understood that when facing an opponent whose cultivation was higher than his and who was good at fighting, the sword pellet must not be used all at once, or it would be easily broken by the opponent's brute force. Guo Lai was very fierce, and he seemed to be impatient, so it was very likely that this was the case. Thus, he would rather fight for a while, and plan his next step after he was confident. Guo Lai's eyes shone, and he seemed to be even more excited. He said happily, Sword cultivator. Good, good, good. Good opponent. Seeing that the sword orb was flying straight toward him, he didn't try to dodge. The light barrier behind him trembled, and a black tortoise with its head and tail appeared. It pushed its shell upward to shake off the sword orb, but it also dissipated, turning into a wisp of essence that returned to the light barrier. However, Zhang Yan saw it clearly. Guo Lai seemed to have blocked it easily, but his feet shook unnoticeably. The light screen was originally thick and solid, but every time a spirit came down, it would fade a little. By the time the black tortoise spirit came down, it was already as light as water, as if it was about to collapse. He couldn't help but have a playful smile on his face. The green-scaled python didn't guard against Zhang Yan suddenly turning into a light and flying away, and it bit the air, scraping the deck and causing the restriction on the boat to tremble. After circling around, it coiled its body on the ground, arched its neck like a bow, and raised its head to look at Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan flew in the air, but the flying tiger was still entangled behind him. Every time the black light swept down, it would hide far away, looking very cunning. Before he could take out his hand to deal with it, the green-scaled python suddenly hissed and stretched its back, shooting up to the sky like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, it had leaped over a distance of several dozen feet. Zhang Yan sneered secretly, and with a sword ray wrapped around him, the conveyance light rose up. After flying another 300 feet, the green-scaled python was already exhausted. It stared at Zhang Yan unwillingly, but it had no choice but to fall down. Zhang Yan, however, drove the sword pellet without mercy. With a command in his mind, the sword ray that was circling around him turned into a light, and with a poochie sound, the green-scaled python was instantly cut into two. The flying tiger behind him saw his protective sword pellet fly away, and it seemed to have seen an opportunity, so it couldn't help but pounce on him. Zhang Yan smiled, and said, "After all, it's a demon beast's soul essence. Its soul is already lost, so it doesn't know when to retreat." He pointed his finger, and the black light swept down. Seeing that the situation was not good, the flying tiger hurriedly leaped to the side, but it didn't expect that the sword pellet that killed the green-scaled python had already turned around, and was waiting for the place where it was going to land. With a flash of white light, its head suddenly fell off, and the golden fire mystic light followed closely behind, shredding it into pieces. The two essences of the python and the tiger returned to the light screen behind Guo Lai. He seemed to be very dissatisfied, and let out a roar. He shook off 2 balls of mystic light, and the 2 beasts reappeared, pouncing on Zhang Yan again. Zhang Yan smiled faintly, and thought, even if the soul essence is not lost, let's see how much mystic light you have to be used up by me. He flew in the conveyance light, but he didn't fight with the white tiger and the green snake. He only found an opportunity to slash down without hesitation, and every time, he would let go of the soul essence. After a few times, Guo Lai's face was slightly pale, and he was even panting a little. After fighting for another moment, Guo Lai realized that neither the green-scaled serpent nor the flying tiger could capture Zhang Yan, and his mystic rays were being whittled away one by one. He shouted, "No matter where you hide, your grandpa Guo has a way to deal with you." He let out a thunderous roar, shaking the mystic light behind him, and with a clear cry of a crane, a white light flew out, and instantly turned into a red-crowned heavenly crane, with a long beak, white feathers, and a black neck. It was obviously an illusion of the mystic light using the soul essence, but it looked no different from a living creature, and was much stronger than the python and the flying tiger's indistinct virtual bodies. However, after releasing this heavenly crane, the light screen behind Guo Lai was almost broken, and his feet felt weak, as if he couldn't stand steadily on the cloud. The heavenly crane flapped its wings, and quickly came to the top of Zhang Yan's head, and its long beak found a position, and pecked down. Zhang Yan's mind turned, and a sword light soared into the sky, but the heavenly crane was full of intelligence, and knew that it was no match for him. With a cry, it immediately turned into light, and went to another place, pecking again. With the heavenly crane's restraint, and the python and flying tiger's bite, Zhang Yan was not as calm as before, but he already knew that even though he seemed to be at a disadvantage, Guo Lai had almost no more tricks left, and now the chance to win was here. Zhang Yan shouted in the air, and the mystic light on top of his head swayed, and the sword pill divided into 3 sword shadows, forcing the 3 soul essences away, and then a brilliant sword light flew out from between his eyebrows, and directly slashed down. Guo Lai's expression changed greatly, and just as he was about to release the black turtle's soul essence to protect himself, his face suddenly twisted a little, and his mouth opened. The mystic light behind him trembled, and with a loud sound, it collapsed, and he fell from the sky. However, at this moment, a dot of sword light had already reached his throat. Chapter 175. The Shao clan's plot. Chao Ming-zhu was only 100 miles away from the White Sky Beast King's island. There were tens of thousands of birds here, and their cries could be heard from dozens of miles away. Even the sound of the waves was suppressed. A young cultivator wearing a golden crown and a loose robe sat on a rainbow. He was like an old man fishing, watching the ebb and flow of the tide with a calm expression. This person was the Shao clan's most outstanding disciple of this generation, Shao Han. He had received the Shao clan's secret technique and was nurtured by the clan. He wasn't even 25 years old yet, but he was already at the 3rd level of the mystic light realm, far surpassing his peers. If he could successfully condense his core before the age of 30, he would have the confidence to open a sect outside of the sect like Suihong after returning. However, when he thought of this, a person's name flashed through his mind. This person's cultivation wasn't as high as his, but he was already in control of a cave. Furthermore, the clan had pushed him out to fight with this person, which made him unhappy. He thought to himself that Zhang Yan was born a commoner, and when he opened his meridians, he was only at the low-grade mist phase. If it wasn't for enlightened Master Sun giving him the Billowing Cloud secret manual, he probably wouldn't even have reached the mystic light phase. He just happened to learn some sword techniques and bully the disciples of those low-grade clans. What's so great about him? What right does someone like him have to be mentioned in the same breath as me? Yet, the clan views him as a great enemy. What a joke. At this moment, a golden rainbow flew over from the sky and arrived in the blink of an eye. It turned into a cloud of white mist and slowly descended. When the mist dissipated, a middle-aged Taoist with purple eyebrows and black robes appeared. He had a ferocious expression on his face. When he saw Shao Han, he hurriedly stepped forward and said with joy, "Zhilang, it is just as you expected." With Lu Rong's help, Yifu easily broke through the restriction on Lu Island and entered the inner court. Now, he has Lu Meinyang locked in a secret chamber. In another 3 to 5 days, he will be able to take her down. I don't think she will be able to cause any more trouble. Shao Han seemed to breathe a sigh of relief when he heard this. He gently patted his knee and smiled, "In that case, we can rest easy." 3 months ago, they brought along a letter from Yan Jingting to pay a visit to White Sky Demon King Lu Meinyang, stating that they requested for the 4 Marquises' water. After reading the letter, Lu Meinyang was courteous and readily agreed. Her tone even hinted that she wanted to rely on the Shao clan. However, she did not expect that after only a month, Yan Jingting would send another letter, saying that Zhang Yan was also coming to get the 4 Marquis water. He also said that the Donghua continent was about to face a calamity, and that overseas might not be a paradise, so they needed to find a way out early. He urged her to make careful arrangements. After Lu Meinyang read the letter, she was a little hesitant, but she hadn't made a final decision on who to lean towards. This matter was supposed to be a secret, but Lu Meinyang's daughter, Lu Rong, admired Shao Han and secretly told him about it. Shao Han knew that he couldn't just sit and wait, so he decided to make the first move. He first asked Lu Rong about the various restrictions on the island, and then he asked an accompanying elder of the Yuanying realm to directly enter the inner court, forcing Lu Meinyang to stay in the inner chamber and cut off contact with the outside world. In an instant, the situation on Egret Island was under his control. Zimei Taoist also admired Shao Han's decisiveness at that time. If Lu Meinyang really chose to join the Qinsang school, it would definitely be disadvantageous to them. Once the formation on the island was activated, even with the help of the Yuanying realm cultivator, it would be extremely passive. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel angry and said, "Why did Zhilang keep Lu Meinyang alive? If Ifu didn't listen to you and wanted to capture her alive, he wouldn't need to waste time at all. He could kill her with a flip of his palm. At that time, this black mountain that can produce the four marquises' water would fall into the hands of the Shao clan. Wouldn't that save a lot of trouble? Shao Han smiled lightly, shook his head and said, after all, the foundation of the Shao clan is still in the Qinsang school. The land of the East Sea is full of demons and fierce beasts. It's not a place to stay for long. If we rashly intervene, I'm afraid it will arouse the fear of the other demon kings. At that time, it won't be easy to clean up the mess. Even though the 18 demon kings of the East Sea lived in different places, they also supported each other. When there were foreign enemies, they often helped each other. If they killed White Sky Demon King just for the four marquises' water, it would inevitably arouse the vigilance and hostility of the other great demons. At that time, if one or two of them were provoked, it would not be worth it. Purple Eyebrows Taoist snorted coldly and said, she got off lightly. Shao Han smiled and said, Brother Qiao, this Lu Mainyang is Yan Jingting's wife after all. The Yan clan and our Shao clan are also considered to be on good terms. This time, thanks to Yan Jingting's guidance, we can come here to find the four marquises' water. For his sake, let Lu Mainyang go this time. There will always be opportunities to meet in the future, and we can also leave a way out for each other. Hearing this, Purple Eyebrows Taoist became angry again and said, Yan Jingting? If it weren't for his letter, Zhilang, you could easily wait for the four marquises' water to appear. Why do we need to do this? Shao Han's eyes revealed a playful look and said, how can I not see through Yan Jingting's thoughts? He is playing both sides. He doesn't want to offend our Shao clan on the surface, but he wants to secretly curry favor with the master and disciple lineage. A letter forced his demon wife to offend us, but he himself is clean. He is really an old fox. Fortunately, this Lu Mainyang has been practicing overseas for a long time, so she is not shrewd and does not guard against her own family. Her daughter leaked the information, so we can preemptively strike. Purple Eyebrows Taoist said with disdain, this Lu Mainyang's daughter is really stupid. She even fantasizes about marrying into the Shao clan. She didn't think that the Shao clan is a famous clan with thousands of years of inheritance. Why would they marry a demon woman like her? Shao Han smiled indifferently and said, if this trip is successful, I can reluctantly accept her as a concubine. Purple Eyebrows Taoist thought for a moment and said, that Zhang Yan seems to be coming here soon. How are you going to deal with him, Zhilang? A trace of killing intent flashed in Shao Han's eyes, and he said in a cold voice, such a good opportunity is a gift from heaven. Of course, we will get rid of it. Purple Eyebrows Taoist suddenly became excited, rubbing his hands and said, Zhilang, do you want me to do it? I heard that this Zhang Yan is a sword cultivator. Not only did he break the four symbols god-killing formation, but he also defeated many true disciples of the 6 rivers and 4 islands. I want to meet him. Hearing this, Shao Han's face turned ugly. He snorted coldly, this Zhang Yan merely relied on the sharpness of the dark north heavenly sword to break through the 4 beasts formation. If it were anyone else with that sword, they would be able to do the same. As for the 6 rivers and 4 islands, they are just disciples of some inferior clans. How can they be compared with the disciples of our Shao clan? Don't you think you will lose your identity if you go? Purple Eyebrows Taoist said in surprise, then what is Zhilang going to do? Shao Han showed an expression of wisdom. He laughed lowly and said, didn't Lu Mainyang's brother, Lu Junbai, say that he has the intention to join our Shao clan? When 4th uncle went to the island, I have already sent a message to him and ordered him to come in time. After all, he is also a core formation cultivator. Can't he deal with a mere Zhang Yan? Purple Eyebrows Taoist was stunned at first, then he clapped his hands and said with a smile, wonderful, Zhilang's method is appropriate. In this way, as long as he kills this Zhang Yan, this Lu Mainyang can only stand on the side of our Shao clan no matter how unwilling she is. How can Yan Jingting explain it clearly? In the future, when the great calamity comes, there will be no way out except to join our family. Shao Han nodded and said, that's exactly what I mean. When the great calamity comes, no one can say what will happen. This overseas land can't be abandoned lightly. After subduing Lu Mainyang, we can keep it as a secret chess piece. Purple Eyebrows Taoist was about to speak, but suddenly looked up and saw a conveyance light flying through the clouds. He couldn't help but laugh and said, Zhoulang, I'm afraid that Lu Junbai is here. The conveyance light sank down and landed in front of the two. A Taoist with a plump figure walked out. He stepped forward and cupped his hands to the two, saying, I am late, please forgive me. If Zhang Yan was next to him, he would definitely recognize this person as the short and fat Taoist who kidnapped Yan Zhenhua at the birthday banquet of Beichen Sec's elder Yan that day. But now there was a little anxiety in his eyes, not as bright as before. Xiao Han looked at him and said coldly, Fellow Taoist Lu, you are late by an hour. You must have gone to inquire about the news. Why, do you know what happened on the island? The short and fat Taoist sighed, bowed deeply, and said, About my sister, I hope fellow Taoist can forgive me. Xiao Han stared at him and said, Of course, but now that the end of the year is approaching, I think that Zhang Yan will come here soon to get the water of the four marquises. So I would like to ask fellow Taoist to go and greet him on our behalf. Lu Junbai hesitated for a moment, and then said in a deep voice, Since fellow Taoist Xiao thinks highly of I will go and make sure you are satisfied. Xiao Han didn't say anything, but the corners of his mouth curved up, and he said, What are you going to do? Lu Junbai said expressionlessly, On this Donghai, it is common for a few people to die. Xiao Han nodded with satisfaction, waved his sleeves, and said, Well, you go, I will wait for the good news here. Lu Junbai bowed, and then without saying a word, he rode the conveyance light and rushed into the clouds, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Purple Eyebrows Taoist smiled at Xiao Han and said, Zhoulang, in this trip to the East Sea, not only did you get the water of the four marquises, but you also got rid of Zhang Yan, a thorn in your side. When you go back, the clan should reward you. Xiao Han snorted coldly and said, I have never taken Zhang Yan seriously. If it is Zhuang Bufan, Luo Qingyu, it is still reasonable. Only those timid old men in the clan worry about this and that all day long. Purple Eyebrows Taoist got a little closer and whispered, I heard that this time, foster father came here not only to escort Zhoulang, but also for another matter. I wonder if you can tell me about it. Xiao Han glanced at him, smiled, and said, Brother is not an outsider, there is no harm in telling you. Fourth uncle came to Donghai this time not because of me, but to meet the appointment of Nanhua Sec's elder Lin, elder Qiu, and Taihao School's elder Yi. This time, the four Yuanying Jinren came together to take down the abandoned disciple of Nanhua sect, Tao Zhenhong. When Purple Eyebrows Taoist heard this, his eyes flashed, and he rubbed his palms and said, With four Yuanying Jinren coming together to take down people, it will be earth-shattering. At that time, I will definitely ask foster father to take me there to see it. Chapter 176. Guo Lai stood firmly in front of the door, staring intently at Zhang Yan's eyes, and said in a low voice, What is it? Zhang Yan smiled lightly and said, Leaf seal true grass, I'm sure you've heard of it. Hearing this, Guo Lai's chest heaved violently, and he said in disbelief, You have this thing? The leaf seal true grass was extremely precious, as soon as it appeared, it would be taken away by others. Even if one obtained it in the celestial market, they would sell it as soon as possible to avoid causing trouble. In addition, it was expensive and hard to find. If one wanted to find it, they could only rely on luck. Although Guo Lai was Tao Zhenhong's disciple, he was not an itinerant cultivator after all. Even if he saw the leaf seal true grass, he did not buy it like many spirit shells. Even disciples of large sects were not as generous as Zhang Yan. The reason why Guo Lai searched for enemies everywhere was also because he had no hope of cultivating in this life, and he had to vent his frustrations. If he could really refine the small golden core, even if the finished core was not high, it would not be completely cut off from the path of Tao, and there would always be a glimmer of hope. Zhang Yan did not say much, and took out the leaf seal true grass, opening the box for Guo Lai to look at. Guo Lai took a look, even with his composure, his fingers could not help but tremble, and he tried to take a breath, and said in a low voice, "Kid, you are so generous, aren't you afraid that I will take this grass?" Zhang Yan smiled, and said, "If I dare to take it out for you to see, I naturally have a way to prevent you from taking it." Guo Lai looked up to the sky and let out a hearty laugh, and said, "Okay, I agree to this." Zhang Yan put away the leaf seal true grass, and looked at Guo Lai with a smile that was not a smile, and said, "But I have to remind you, this Xiao Han has a Yuanying cultivator by his side, you have to think carefully." Guo Lai sneered, "If this matter was easy to handle, why would you come to me? Why would you come to me? No need to be long-winded. Since I have already agreed, I will not go back on my word. If I die, it has nothing to do with you, my master will take revenge for me." Zhang Yan nodded, and said with a smile, "Then rest well, fellow Taoist." Hearing this, Guo Lai laughed. Zhang Yan cupped his hands, and turned to leave. This reef was over 100 miles from here, and it was shaped like a fish's spine, and was extremely easy to recognize. The reef was more than 100 kilometers away. It was shaped like the spine of a fish and was very recognizable. He hovered the Chi Dragon ship in the sky and meditated. Soon, half a month had passed. On this day, 2 streaks of light, one white and one red, flew over from the sky. Before they even reached the ship, a white and a red streak of light flew over. Zhang Yan sensed it and called out to Guo Lai, then they walked out together. Lu Junbai looked down from the flying light. Originally, he still had doubts about Zhang Yan. Right now, Guo Lai was standing there like an iron tower. The two of them had met once on the sea before, so they recognized him. They immediately felt relieved. With a shout, the light descended like a wisp of white smoke. Chen Li, when the red light descended, it lightly landed on the deck and soundlessly revealed a bright and beautiful woman. She had a beautiful face, and there were no gold hairpins or beads on her head. Her long hair was tied up with an embroidered handkerchief, and it hung down to her heels. She wore a bright silver robe with a red veil on the inside. On her feet, she wore soft cloud boots, and she held a silver spear in her hand. The tassel of the spear was as red as blood. Lu Junbai hurriedly introduced to Zhang Yan and Guo Lai, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, fellow Taoist Guo, this is Demon Monarch Junyue, Jing Miaojuan." Zhang Yan smiled, and cupped his hands, saying, "I am Zhang Yan, greetings, Demon Monarch Jing." Jing Miaojun's beautiful eyes that were as clear as water looked over. Guo Lai's body only paused for a moment before sweeping over to Zhang Yan's face. When she saw that Zhang Yan was also looking over, she hurriedly shifted her gaze away. Her cheeks were slightly red. She shyly bowed and said, "Greetings fellow Taoist, this servant greets you." Guo Lai was a little impatient, and said, "Since everyone is here, when do we leave?" Jing Miaojuan wanted to greet Guo Lai, but when she heard his loud voice, she seemed to be frightened. She covered her bulging chest and took a step back. Zhang Yan glanced at her, but he did not look down on Demon Monarch Junyue because of her actions. To be able to become a demon monarch in the East Sea, how could it be as simple as it looked? He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Guo, please don't be impatient. We will depart now. This sea boat is very spacious, you can choose a quiet room to stay in." Having said that, he returned to the main pavilion, picked up the talisman, and started the boat. Along the way, the boat sailed towards Egret Island. The journey this time was uneventful. 10 days later, an island surrounded by green trees, flowers, with hundreds of birds chirping together, appeared in the horizon. The sea boat was too big, and if it moved forward, it would inevitably be noticed by the other party, so it stopped far away. Lu Junbai was familiar with the place, so he first turned into a white smoke and went to the island to investigate. In less than half an hour, he turned back and sneered, "So 10 days ago, Xiao Han and his uncle Xiao Mu left Egret Island and went southeast. They can't wait to get the water of the 4 marquises. Now, there is only Zi Mei left on the island, and it is the best time for us to act. Everyone, please follow me." With Lu Junbai leading the way, the four snuck through the sea and smoothly arrived at the side of Egret Island. They carefully bypassed the restriction and went to the back mountain. There were countless spiritual birds dancing on the island. In the inner island, there was a clear stream surrounding a cliff. On top of the cliff, there was a strange cave abode with wisteria hanging outside as curtains. This was Lu Mainyang's cave abode. If it wasn't for Lu Junbai's guidance, it would have been extremely difficult to find it. After arriving at the back mountain, Lu Junbai led the three into a hidden kernel. He carefully looked around, then pointed to a cave covered by vines and said in a low voice, "There is a secret passage leading from the back mountain to my sister's quiet room." That day, there was no restriction set up in order to prevent a spy from occupying the cave abode. Apart from my sister and me, no one else knows about it. Although Lu Junbai said it openly, he was thinking in his heart, after rescuing Lu Mainyang, he will definitely seal this secret passage. Guo Lai was about to rush down when Zhang Yan reached out to stop him, saying, "Wait, it is too dangerous for the four of us to go down together. I have a method of concealment and am willing to go in and check. It is not too late to make a countermeasure after finding out if she is under control." Lu Junbai thought for a moment and agreed, this method is appropriate. Zhang Yan took a step forward and a mysterious light flashed on top of his head. He descended and brushed away the tenacious old vines that had grown for who knows how many years, then bent down to enter the cave. The cave was very spacious. Below him, there was a cloud floating. His feet did not touch the ground as he walked forward. After 2 or 3 turns, a green jade screen appeared in front of him. Behind it, there was a smooth blue stone blocking the way. This kind of thing could be broken with just a brush of the mysterious light, but Zhang Yan calculated carefully. At this time, he had already reached the depths of the mountain. He was already very close to Lu Mainyang's cave. If the movement was a little too big, it would attract the attention of the purple eyebrows Taoist above, and the loss would outweigh the gain. He stepped forward and gently placed his hand on it. He found that he actually felt that he could not push it. His eyes focused and the essence in his abdomen that was cultivated by the mind-comprehending contract suddenly swelled. His strength instantly multiplied. He held on to the blue stone and swayed a little. He reached down and gently lifted it up, then silently placed it to the side. At this time, there was an alley paved with gray slate stone in front of him. He walked in leisurely. Not long after, he reached the end. Looking up, there was a jade cover above. This must be the entrance to Lu Mainyang's inner chamber. He reached below and put his hand on it. It was just a light touch. Before he could do anything, he heard a gentle voice from above saying, "Is it Junbai down there?" Zhang Yan's movement paused for a moment. His eyes flashed and he said, "Is it Demon King Lu? I am Zhang Yan, entrusted by Taoist Lu." The voice said with surprise, "Are you the Taoist Zhang from Qinsang school mentioned in Jingting's letter?" "Yes, I am." Zhang Yan said in a deep voice, "Demon King Lu, I can't stay here for long. I'll make a long story short. Have you been tampered with?" Lu Mainyang was silent for a while, then sighed faintly and said, "Xiaomu used a talisman to stick to my head, and he used a forbidden golden nail to fix my golden core. Even the door of the quiet room was locked by the Yunyang golden lock. Zimei also has a restriction talisman in her hand. If he chanted the incantation and the golden nail fell, all my cultivation would be gone, and it would be difficult for me to escape now." Hearing this, Zhang Yan's heart calmed down. As long as it was a restriction that required chanting the incantation, it would still take time. On his side, there were 2 core formation demon cultivators and a small golden core cultivator. As long as the timing was right, there was absolutely no chance for Zimei to cast the spell. He was so enthusiastic to save Lu Mainyang, but it was not that he didn't have any intentions. From Lu Junbai's words, he could tell that the Donghua continent was about to face a great calamity. The Lu siblings both had the intention of choosing a large sect to rely on, but they couldn't choose the right one. Although he opened a mansion outside the sect, there was no one else in the clear nether heavenly lake who could support the situation other than him and Luo Xiao. If he recruited the siblings into the mansion after he reached the core formation, not only would his strength increase by a level, but he would also have Yan Jingting as external help. It should be known that this old man was very likely to step into the Yuanying realm within a few decades. The benefits could be said to be endless. Zhang Yan said, "Demon King Lu, I already know about my situation. I'll call someone to rescue you now. However, I have one thing to tell you. If that Zimei Daoist comes and asks you if you know Guolai, just say that you offended Tao Zhenren in the past." Although Lu Meinyang didn't know why he did this, she knew there must be a deeper meaning, so she immediately said, "I understand." Zhang Yan said, "Demon King Lu, then I'll take my leave first." Lu Meinyang was silent for a while before saying, "Fellow Daoist, if you see my daughter, please spare her this time. She is usually very obedient, and she was just muddle-headed for a moment." Zhang Yan shook his head and responded casually. He was not interested in what she said next. He turned around and walked out the way he came. In a moment, he was out of the cave. Seeing him come out, Lu Junbai hurriedly asked, "Fellow Daoist, did you see my sister?" Zhang Yan nodded and sighed. Demon King Lu was indeed restrained by a restriction. Even his gold core was hit with a forbidden golden nail. Lu Junbai's expression couldn't help but change slightly. He said, "Then what should we do?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist, you said before that Zimei Daoist has a magic treasure to protect himself. How did you know?" Lu Junbai said resentfully, "Fellow Daoist, you don't know, but this person is extremely aggressive. After coming to the island for a few days, he has fought with me no less than 3 times. Therefore, I know that he has a magic treasure called Flowing Wind Ring. Once this thing is out, no matter how hard I try, I can't kill him within the ring. I was defeated several times because of this." Chapter 177. The Dragon Country's ship traveled for another 10 days and was not far from the Pan Island where the White Sky Demon King resided. According to Yan Jingting's book, Zhang Yan roughly estimated that there was still half a month's journey left. However, in order to obtain the 64 Marquis's water, out of courtesy, he had to pay a visit. Just as Zhang Yan was thinking about what kind of greeting gift he should give, he raised his head as if he had sensed something. He saw a ray of light rising from the distant sea like white smoke. It then spun in the sky and headed straight for him. On this vast sea, he occasionally saw 1 or 2 cultivators traveling on a ship. It was extremely rare to see a cultivator traveling on light. Unless their cultivation had reached a certain level, they wouldn't dare to do so. Moreover, it was coming from this place, so Lu Junbai couldn't help but take a closer look. This person seemed to be surprised by the size of the Dragon Country's ship. After approaching, he circled around the ship a few times before landing on the deck. The white smoke slowly dissipated, revealing a short and fat Daoist. He took a step forward and glanced at Zhang Yan, saying in a deep voice, "Fellow Daoist, are you Zhang Yan from Qinsang School?" Zhang Yan smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Yes, I am." "Is it Daoist Lu?" Lu Junbai exclaimed in surprise, saying, "You recognize me?" Zhang Yan flicked his sleeves and smiled, saying, "I met Daoist Lu once at Elder Yan's birthday banquet. It's been almost 2 years since we parted. Could it be that Daoist Lu has forgotten?" Lu Junbai was startled and suddenly remembered that the only person he didn't manage to take down at the banquet was Zhang Yan. He couldn't help but snort heavily, saying, "So it's you." He hesitated for a moment, then took out a jade bottle from his sleeves and tossed it over, saying, "Catch it. I know why you're here. This is the 64 Marquis's water that was collected 120 years ago. Even though it's not as good as fresh water, it's enough for you. There's trouble ahead. If you want to live, I advise you to leave as soon as possible." How could Lu Junbai not know why Xiao Han wanted him to kill Zhang Yan? If he really killed Zhang Yan, he would be completely on board the ship of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. He would be tied together and could no longer get down. How could he be willing to be manipulated by others? Thus, he only wanted to send Zhang Yan away. Even if he had to give away the 4 marquises' water, he would do his best not to offend the master and disciple of the Qinsang school. Zhang Yan reached out and caught the jade bottle. He smiled and said in a clear voice, "That day, I promised Elder Yan that I would come to the East Sea to bring back my fellow Taoists, but I didn't want to disappoint him. Does Taoist Lu know where they are?" Lu Junbai said coldly, "Yan Jingting had sent a letter saying that I have already released Linqing Monastery and Bu Pavilion. As for my nephew and 2 grandnephews, you don't have to worry about them. Yan Jingting won't say anything." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "I see that Taoist Lu seems to be in some trouble. Why don't you tell me? Maybe I can be of some help." Lu Junbai looked at him and shook his head. "You're just a mystic light realm cultivator. Even if I tell you, what can you do?" Zhang Yan shook the jade bottle in his hand and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, I don't want to accept this for nothing. I don't know if Elder Yan has mentioned to fellow Taoists that I am a true disciple of the Dark Azure sect. Now, I have opened a mansion outside the sect and I have a place to myself. Let me know fellow Taoists' difficulties. Even if I really can't help fellow Taoists now, I may be able to return the favor in the future." Hearing this, Lu Junbai's expression couldn't help but ease a little. Zhang Yan said that he didn't want to owe people favors, but compared to Xiao Han, who would immediately attack if he didn't like him, Lu Junbai couldn't help but think, could it be that my plan was wrong? That's right. Those profound sects are high up. Why would they look at an itinerant cultivator like me? Lu Junbai started to try to get close to Xiao Han in order to increase his own cultivation level. He wasn't afraid of this idea. Although monsters like him dominated an area overseas, in reality, no matter if it was cultivation methods, pills, treasures, or caves, they couldn't compare to the large sections. If he wanted to increase his cultivation level, he had to find a high-grade blessed land. Otherwise, his progress would be very slow. He might not be able to reach the Great Tao even if he used up his lifespan. It wasn't that there weren't high-grade caves in the East Sea, but most of them were tens of thousands of feet deep in the ocean. With his cultivation level, he naturally couldn't go down. Rumors said that some of them were even occupied by great monsters. Even if he found them, what could he do? Therefore, if he could rely on a large profound sect in the East Flower continent, even if it was a second-rate sect, he would be very satisfied. Just like his big sister, Lu Mainyang, when she heard that Yan Jingting was a direct disciple of the Beichen sect, she also flattered him. In the end, they even became husband and wife. Unfortunately, the Yan sect was very strict and refused to accept her into the sect. Instead, she accepted her children into the sect. When Xiao Han came to ask for the 4 marquises' water, Lu Junbai deliberately befriended him, hoping to become a guest of the Xiao clan. Unexpectedly, Xiao Han saw that things might change and suddenly turned hostile. This move made him extremely disgusted, and even a little bitterly disappointed. Lu Junbai sighed and recounted Xiao Han's actions on Xiao Island to Zhang Yan. In the end, he said, "I've already been out for half a month. My sister must have already been captured by Xiao Han's uncle, Xiao Muzhui. For the sake of her life, I had no choice but to make this trip. Originally, Xiao Han ordered me to take fellow Taoist's life, but I can also see that he is planning to use someone else to do his dirty work, so I only wanted to persuade fellow Taoists to leave." At this point, his voice became a bit more severe. "But if you don't leave, for the sake of my sister's safety, I can only kill you. So that's how it is." Hearing Lu Junbai's threatening words, Zhang Yan didn't take it to heart in the slightest. He thought for a moment and opened his mouth. "I have a method that can save Senior White Sky. I don't know if you dare to do it." "What?" Lu Junbai was taken aback, and there was some disbelief in his eyes. However, looking at Zhang Yan's confident smile and thinking of Yan Jingting's praise for this person in the letter, he still couldn't help but say, "Let's hear it." Unexpectedly, Zhang Yan said something that seemed to be unrelated. "First, May I ask when the four marquises' water will fall? Lu Junbai looked at him suspiciously and said, if it doesn't come in October, then it will come in November. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed, and he nodded and said, I know that the four marquises' water needs to be carried in a jade bottle to prevent it from falling to the ground. Once the water falls, it will be 6 hours. When Xiao Han is doing this, he will definitely come personally and need someone to protect him. According to what you said, there are only 3 people on this trip. In order to ensure safety, he will definitely ask that Yuanying master to be by his side. Then only Zimei Daoist will be left at Senior Whiteski's side. That will be our chance. Lu Junbai's body shook slightly, and he nodded slowly. This method is feasible, but Zimei's cultivation is similar to mine. Both are at the first level of the core transformation realm, and she also has a magic treasure to protect her. Maybe she has placed some restrictions on my sister. If we want to take her down in one go, unless there are 2 core transformation realm cultivators working together, otherwise, don't even think about it. I can find another friend to come, but even so, there is only a 70% chance of success. Seeing that he was a little hesitant, Zhang Yan thought for a while and said again, I will take care of the magic treasure. If there is another small gold core realm cultivator to help, what are the chances of fellow Daoist winning? Lu Junbai raised his head in surprise and said, May I ask fellow Daoist, who is this person? Zhang Yan smiled slightly and said, This person is called Guolai. Do you know him? Lu Junbai said in surprise, Is he the eldest disciple of Tao Zhenren, Guolai? Zhang Yan nodded and said, That's right. Lu Junbai couldn't help but be overjoyed and said, although fellow Daoist Qi is a small gold core realm cultivator, he has cultivated for hundreds of years. His cultivation is orthodox. If we can get him to help, we have an 80% chance of taking down Zimei in one go. But where is fellow Daoist Guo now? Zhang Yan glanced at the treasure pavilion and said, He is on my sea boat. Lu Junbai heard this and clenched his fists tightly. His body was a little trembling. Obviously, he was a little emotional. After a moment, he slowly let out a long breath and said in a deep voice, My sister and Demon King Yujun are close friends. It is less than 4,000 miles away from here. I can go there. 100 miles to the south, there is a nameless island that looks like the spine of a fish. Fellow Daoist, please go there and wait. I will come to meet you in half a month or at least 5 days. After that, he cupped his hands and leaped up, turning into a flying rainbow. He was an immortal bird that was very good at flying. He could fly on the ocean without the sea boat. Zhang Yan only saw a flash of white light in front of him, and the person disappeared. Zhang Yan put away the jade bottle, but he sneered in his heart. No matter how good the 4 marquis water from 120 years ago was, it was not as good as freshly collected water. How could he let Xiao Han get it for free? Even if there were Yuanying cultivators to protect him, he still had to find a way to compete with them. After standing in the same place for a moment, he turned around and walked to the treasure pavilion on the first floor of the ship. As soon as he arrived at the green corridor, he saw the roc brought by Guolai was leisurely combing its feathers. When it saw Zhang Yan coming in from outside, it chirped. There was no hostility, but it was trying to please him. Zhang Yan shook his head and smiled. That day when he carried the unconscious Guolai into the quiet room, this roc didn't make any noise. Although it was Guolai's master and servant, it was the complete opposite of its master's violent and brave temperament. He didn't know how it was raised. The reason why Guolai fainted that day was because he had used up too much yuan qi. He didn't know how to sit down and meditate in time, and he forcefully used his cultivation method to fight with Zhang Yan. As a result, he was like a lamp that ran out of oil and the mysterious light collapsed. That was why he fainted. In other words, he exhausted himself. Zhang Yan had heard that Guolai was the eldest disciple of Tao Zhenhong. He was brave and ruthless, even to the point where he didn't care about life and death. This person was originally going to form his dan, but someone knew his temper and wanted to do something bad. That person took advantage of the time when he was condensing his Dan to challenge him to a fight. He couldn't restrain himself and came out to fight. As a result, he gave up condensing his Dan halfway. In the end, he only formed a small Jin Dan. But he didn't expect that after suffering such a big loss, he still didn't remember it. He walked slowly all the way, but before he reached the quiet room, he heard a voice coming from inside. The voice was full of dissatisfaction. "Boy, I heard what you said to Lu Junbai. Although you let me go, don't expect me to help you." Zhang Yan smiled to himself. He stood in the corridor and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't be in a hurry to refuse. I won't make you work for nothing. There will be benefits for you." A loud laugh came from inside. "Tell me. If there are really benefits, I, Master Gua, won't be afraid of the Shao clan and the Di clan." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "What if I say I have a way to help you condense your small Jin Dan and re-enter the path of Tao?" Chapter 178. Crossing the sea and fighting the waves. Purple Eyebrows Taoist had an unyielding temperament. After spitting out a mouthful of blood essence, he was afraid that his Jin Dan would be stolen after his death, so he immediately screamed and said, "My adoptive father will kill you all for me." He suddenly poured a mouthful of primordial qi down and shattered the Jin Dan in his abdomen. His body exploded into a cloud of blood mist, and his original spirit drifted away. He died on the spot. Seeing this scene, Zhang Yan secretly felt pity. If he could let the 9 absorptions magic slip, absorb this person's blood essence, maybe his divine contract could be improved to a higher level. Although Monster Queen Junyue's spear pierced through Purple Eyebrows Taoist's chest, in fact, she deliberately avoided the vital parts and did not really kill him. She only intended to capture him alive. Otherwise, this stab would have killed him. What she did was not necessarily wrong. First, she was just a helper invited by Lu Junbai, and there was no hatred between her and the Shao family. Second, holding this person as a hostage could make the other party have some scruples. If Purple Eyebrows Taoist was willing to beg for mercy and voluntarily hand over the talisman that restrained Lu Mainyang, he could have kept his life. However, he was too impetuous. He felt that these people would not let him go after how they treated Lu Mainyang. If he fell into their hands, they might even retaliate. Therefore, he would rather kill himself than be humiliated and tortured. Seeing that this person was so unyielding that they could not even catch him alive, Lu Junbai's face also darkened. On this Egret Island, White Sky Demon King Lu Mainyang had been operating for a long time, and the cave residence was covered with big and small formations and restrictions. However, her daughter Yen Rong had told Xiaomu all the ways to enter and exit. For the sake of convenience and for fear of leaving some unknown backups, Xiaomu had forcibly demolished many formations, leaving only a few, which were of no use to him. Now there was no place on this island that could be relied on. If the flying sword was gone, if Xiaomu came back to seek revenge, where could they escape to on this vast ocean? A trace of regret appeared on Monster Queen Junyue's pretty face. If she had been ruthless earlier, how could this happen? Guo Lai looked indifferent and said with a smile, "If we can't beat him, we can leave. At worst, we can just split up and go our separate ways. Whoever is caught can only blame their bad luck, ha." Zhang Yan remained calm and decisively said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, please rescue Demon King Lu as soon as possible. We'll rush back to our Dragon Nation's Ark. With our combined strength and the protection of the restriction, we can even resist the fierce attacks of a nascent soul cultivator for a while." Lu Junbai's spirits were refreshed as if he'd found a life-saving straw, and he nodded repeatedly. He didn't have the time to say anything before hastily running into the abode. Not long after, he carried out a white-clothed, black-haired woman. She was panting and her face was pale. She looked weak and weak. Demon Monarch Junyu rushed forward and asked, "Senior Sister Lu, how are you?" The woman opened her beautiful eyes and said weakly, "Is it Junior Sister Jing?" "I'm fine." Lu Junbai replied, "I have removed the talisman and removed the golden nails. It is just that my sister had a fierce battle with Xiao Muzhui earlier and her mana has been restrained for a long time. She is slightly weak and will recover after some rest. Lu Meinyang raised her head again and looked at Zhang Yan, who was not far away. She said softly, "This is fellow Taoist Zhang, right?" Zhang Yan quickly stepped forward and cupped his hands to stop her. "Monster King Lu, you are too kind. This is not a good place to talk, it is better to leave as soon as possible." Lu Meinyang nodded and looked around the island with a little reluctance. She patted Lu Junbai's shoulder and said, "Little brother, listen to fellow Taoist Zhang. Let's go." Lu Meinyang nodded and glanced at the surroundings of the island with a slight sense of loss. She seemed to be a little reluctant to leave. She patted Lu Junbai's shoulder and said, "Little brother, listen to fellow Taoist Zhang." Lu Meinyang nodded and looked around the island with a little reluctance. She patted Lu Junbai's shoulder and said, "Brother, listen to fellow Taoist Zhang. Let's go." The others also flew up into the sky and left the island. A few hundred miles away, Xiao Han stood on a small island with his hands behind his back. He looked at the black mountain in front of him. He wore a high hat and a wide belt, his clothes fluttered in the wind. Together with his handsome face, he looked indescribably elegant and romantic. Beside him stood a slender girl with long sleeves and a picturesque face. Her beautiful eyes were looking at him with deep affection. From time to time, the two of them would whisper to each other, and from time to time, they would laugh. Not far away from them, an old Taoist reclined against the clouds. His eyes were half closed, but there was a flash of lightning in his eyes from time to time. Suddenly, a white light flashed in the sky, and a flying sword pierced through the clouds. The old Taoist furrowed his brows and waved his hand. The flying sword fell to the ground. He used 2 fingers to hold it and examined the qi of blood on it. After calculating with his fingers, he sighed and said, "Xiao Lai, oh Xiao Lai, you didn't listen to me, so you died and your Tao disappeared." Xiao Han also noticed the abnormality. He pushed the girl away and asked, "Fourth uncle, what's the matter?" Daoren said calmly, "Your sworn brother, Xiao Lai, was killed." "What?" Xiao Han's face was filled with shock and anger. He said, "Who dared to kill a member of the Xiao clan?" Daoren said expressionlessly, "This matter must have something to do with Lu Meinyang." The girl was shocked and quickly grabbed Xiao Han's arm. She said anxiously, "Brother Xiao, mother was locked in the quiet room. How could she do such a thing? Is senior mistaken?" Xiao Han swung his sleeves and broke free from her hand. He said coldly, "Why would my fourth uncle speak nonsense?" Seeing his expression change, the girl didn't dare to say anything. Her eyes were slightly red, and she looked wronged. Xiao Han coldly snorted and raised his hand to straighten his belt. He took 2 steps forward and bowed to the old Taoist and said, "Fourth uncle, please avenge my sworn brother." Xiao Mu's eyes were cold. He said, "I warned Xiao Lai long ago. He didn't listen to me, so he was courting death. It has nothing to do with anyone else. If you come to beg me, you have to follow the rules. I promised fifth brother that you can ask me for 3 things. I won't ask for anything else. Escorting you to the Eastern Sea is the first. You begged me to take down Lu Meinyang is the second. Now you're begging me to help you. This is the third. After these 3 things are done, even if your life is in danger, I won't help you. You have to think carefully." Xiao Han knew that people like his fourth uncle, who were Yuanying enlightened masters, valued their lives. If it wasn't for the fact that the matter involved karma, or if there was a great benefit in improving one's cultivation, he wouldn't help a junior disciple. However, Xiao Han thought that after this trip to the Eastern Sea, he would be able to build his gold core. In the future, he could find a master with a high level of cultivation. He wouldn't need to bother this indifferent fourth uncle anymore. So, he gritted his teeth and said, "Xiao Lai's sworn brother and I were good friends. Now that he was murdered, if I don't take revenge, what would happen to the Xiao clan's reputation? Fourth uncle, please avenge my sworn brother and kill the person who harmed him." After he finished speaking, he bowed deeply. Although his words sounded dignified, the real reason was not as such. It was a pity that Xiao Lai had died, but the relationship between the two of them was not that deep. However, if he could not even avenge the death of someone close to him, once he established his own clan in the future, who in the clan would come and rely on him? Moreover, he faintly felt that this matter wasn't that simple. Lu Junbai hadn't returned yet, and this matter seemed to be related to someone else. If he could solve this once and for all, it would be the best. Xiaomu looked at him and said slowly, "Have you thought it through?" Xiao Han bowed again and said seriously, "Fourth uncle, please take action. Kill all these thieves." Xiaomu nodded and stood up from the cloud. As his Taoist robe fluttered, a ray of light shot up and disappeared in a flash. Zhang Yan and the others had already used their flying lights to the limit. When they saw the figure of the Dragon Country's ship appear in front of them, they all relaxed a little. But at this moment, a thunderclap came from above the clouds. A cloud followed, and on it sat a purple-robed Daoran. He saw that the 5 people in front of him were flying away, and there was a disdainful look in his eyes. He straightened his palm and muttered something. After a moment, he gently grabbed and released his hand, and a cloud of clear air fell. In an instant, wind and thunder rose from the flat ground, and a gust of wind rolled up thousands of tons of seawater, forming a circle of huge waves that surrounded Zhang Yan and the others. His cold voice seemed to come from above the 9 heavens. "You are just fish in a shallow pond. Where can you go?" Lu Junbai looked at the towering waves around him that rose high but didn't fall down, and then looked at Daoran who was chasing them from the sky. He smiled bitterly, knowing that he couldn't escape today. He gently helped Lu Mainyang down from his back, and said to Zhang Yan, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my sister later." Zhang Yan nodded slightly. Lu Junbai turned to Guo Lai and said, "Fellow Taoist Guo, life and death are at stake. We have no choice but to advance." Guo Lai laughed heartily and said, "Master Guo, aside from my master, I've never fought a nascent soul cultivator before. Today, I'm going to have some fun." Although Monster Monarch Jun Yu looked delicate, she knew that there was no way out in this situation. If she didn't fight, she would die. With a shout, her body turned into a rainbow light, and she was the first to rush up. The divine weapon in her hand stabbed towards Doran's head. Daoran was expressionless. He stretched out a finger, and a thin white gas gushed out from his fingertip, easily blocking the silver spear. Lu Junbai knew that the 3 of them only had a chance of survival if they worked together. When Monster Monarch Jun Yu rushed out, he followed. But before he could get close, Daoran flicked his sleeve, and a cloud of smoke swept him in. In an instant, he felt dizzy, and he spun around 100 times. He felt weak all over, and he couldn't use any strength. After an unknown period of time, he bit the tip of his tongue, and with a loud cry, he revealed his true form. An egret with a crest on its head, yellow eyes, black beak, and a body of white feathers broke through the smoke. It let out a clear cry, and turned to peck at Doran's head. The old Taoist sneered coldly, "How dare a coward like you show off?" Just as he was about to attack, he frowned and dodged the spear. The cloud of smoke fell from his fingertip, and blocked Monster Monarch Jun Yu's next attack. Although Guo Lai was a step slower, he was still on top of the cloud. He shook off the mysterious light, took out a talisman, and slapped it on the light screen behind him. Then, a strand of essence chi rushed out of the light screen behind him, and with a deafening roar, a ferocious-looking white ape rushed out of the light screen. The old Taoist had a cold smile on his face. He flipped his palm, and with a crackling sound, a bolt of purple lightning struck towards Guo Lai. The purple lightning came so fast that Guo Lai couldn't react in time. But just as it was about to hit his body, a jade token flew out from between his brows. The jade let out a circle of colorful light, and within it, a talisman could be vaguely seen. It stretched and shrank, and the purple lightning was swallowed. Daoran frowned, and said, It's Tao Zhenhong's virtue-protecting charm token." Guo Lai calmed down after escaping death, and shouted, "Everyone, kill! Let's kill this Daoran." Monster Monarch Junyu and Lu Junbai charged forward without a word. Anger flashed in Doran's eyes when he saw the three of them coming at him together. He shouted, and a ray of light shot out from the top of his head. The light spread out like a fan, and in a split second, the clouds and smoke were dispersed. In the middle of the light was a Yuanying statue. Its body was covered in light gold, and its face was exactly the same as Xiao Mu. It held a horsetail whisk in its left hand, and a dharma plate in its right. Its feet rode on the wind and clouds, and it looked dignified and solemn. It stood on top of the smoke, and its voice sounded like thunder. "A few core formation cultivators dare to fight me?" Chapter 179. Guolai stood firmly in front of the door and stared at Zhang Yan's eyes, saying in a low voice, "What is it?" Zhang Yan smiled lightly and said, "Leaf seal true grass, I'm sure you've heard of it before." Hearing this, Guolai's chest heaved violently and he said in disbelief, "You have this thing?" The leaf seal true grass was extremely precious. Once it appeared, it would be taken away by others. Even if one obtained it in the celestial market, they would sell it as soon as possible to avoid causing trouble. In addition, it was expensive and hard to find. If one wanted to find it, they could only rely on luck. Although Guolai was Tao Zhenhong's disciple, he was not an itinerant cultivator after all. Even if he saw the leaf seal true grass, he did not buy it like many spirit shells. Even disciples of large sects were not as generous as Zhang Yan. The reason why Guolai searched for enemies everywhere was also because he had no hope of cultivating in this life, so he vented his frustrations. If he could really refine the small golden core, even if the finished core was not high, it would not be completely cut off from the path of Tao. There would always be a glimmer of hope. Zhang Yan did not say much. He took out the leaf seal true grass and opened the box for Guolai to look at. Guolai took a look. Even with his composure, his fingers could not help but tremble. He took a deep breath and said in a muffled voice, "Kid, you're so generous. Aren't you afraid that I'll take this grass?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "If I dare to take it out for you to see, I naturally have a way to prevent you from taking it." Guolai looked up to the sky and let out a hearty laugh. "Okay, I agree to this." Zhang Yan put away the leaf seal true grass and looked at Guolai with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "But I have to remind you that there is a Yuanying cultivator besides Xiao Han. You have to think about it carefully." Guolai sneered. "If this matter was easy, why would you come to me? Why would you come to look for Master Gua? No need to be long-winded. Since I've already agreed, I won't go back on my word. If I die, it has nothing to do with you. My master will avenge me." Zhang Yan nodded and said with a smile, "Then take a good rest, Taoist." Guolai snorted when he heard that. Zhang Yan cupped his fists and turned to leave. He returned to the treasure pavilion, sat down, and drove the Chi Dragon ship to the islands that Lu Junbai had mentioned. The reef was more than 100 kilometers away. It was shaped like the spine of a fish and was very recognizable. He hovered the Chi Dragon ship in the sky and meditated. Half a month passed quickly. On this day, 2 streaks of light, one white and one red, flew over from the sky. Zhang Yan sensed it and called out to Guolai, then they walked out together. Lu Junbai looked down from above. Originally, he still had doubts about Zhang Yan. Right now, Guolai was standing there like an iron tower. The two of them had met once on the sea before, so they recognized him. They immediately felt relieved. With a shout, the light descended like a wisp of white smoke. On his other side. When the red light descended, it lightly stood on the deck and silently revealed a bright and beautiful woman. This woman had a cherry mouth and a jade-like nose. Her appearance was elegant, and there were no gold hairpins or beads on her head. Her long hair was tied up with an embroidered handkerchief and hung down to her heels. She wore a bright silver armor with a red veil on the inside. She wore a red cape on the outside and a pair of soft cloud boots on her feet. In her hand was a silver spear whose tassel was as red as blood. Lu Junbai hurriedly introduced to Zhang Yan and Guo Lai, fellow Daoist Zhang, fellow Daoist Guo, this is Demon Monarch Junyue, Jing Miaojuan. Zhang Yan smiled and cupped his fists. I am Zhang Yan. Greetings, Demon Monarch Jing. Jing Miaojuan's clear and beautiful eyes looked over. Guo Lai's body only paused for a moment before sweeping over. However, her eyes stopped on Zhang Yan's face for a moment. When she saw Zhang Yan looking over, she hurriedly looked away. Her cheeks were slightly red, and she shyly curtsied, greetings, fellow Daoist. Guo Lai was a little impatient. Since everyone is here, when should we move? Jing Miaojuan wanted to greet Guo Lai, but when she heard his loud voice, she seemed to be frightened. She covered her bulging chest and took a step back. Zhang Yan glanced at her. He did not underestimate Demon Monarch Junyue because of her actions. To become a demon monarch in the East Sea, how could it be as simple as it looked? He smiled and said, fellow Daoist Guo, please don't be impatient. We will depart now. This sea boat is very spacious. Fellow Taoists can choose a quiet room to stay in for the time being. Having said that, he returned to the main pavilion, picked up the talisman, and started the boat. Along the way, the boat sailed towards Egret Island. The journey this time was uneventful. 10 days later, an island surrounded by green trees, flowers, with hundreds of birds chirping together, appeared in the horizon. The sea boat was too big. If it moved forward, it would inevitably be noticed by the other party. Therefore, it stopped far away. Lu Junbai was familiar with the place. He first turned into a white smoke and went to the island to investigate. In less than an hour, he turned back and sneered, so 10 days ago, Xiao Han and his uncle, Xiao Mu, left Egret Island and went southeast. I think they can't wait to get the water of the 4 marquises. Now that there is only Zimei left on the island, it is the best time for us to act. Everyone, please follow me. With Lu Junbai leading the way, the 4 snuck through the sea and smoothly arrived at the site of Egret Island. They carefully bypassed the restriction and went to the back of the mountain. There were countless spiritual birds dancing on the island. In the inner island, there was a clear stream surrounding a cliff. On top of the cliff, there was a strange cave abode with wisteria hanging outside as curtains. This was Lu Mainyang's cave abode. If it wasn't for Lu Junbai's guidance, it would have been extremely difficult to find it. After arriving at the back of the mountain, Lu Junbai led the 3 into a hidden kernel. He carefully looked around and pointed to a cave covered by vines. He said in a low voice, there is a secret passage leading from the back of the mountain to my sister's quiet room. That day, there was no restriction in place to prevent any traders from occupying the cave abode. Apart from my sister and me, no one else knows about it. Although Lu Junbai said it openly, he was thinking in his heart, after rescuing Lu Mainyang, he will definitely seal this secret passage. Guo Lai was about to rush down when Zhang Yan reached out to stop him. He said, wait, it is too dangerous for the 4 of us to go down together. I have a method of concealment and am willing to go in and check. It will not be too late to make a countermeasure after finding out if she is under control. Lu Junbai thought for a moment and agreed, this method is appropriate. Zhang Yan took a step forward and a mysterious light flashed above his head. He fell down and brushed away the old vines that had grown for who knows how many years. He then bent down and entered the cave. The cave was very spacious. There were clouds hanging below him. He walked forward without touching the ground. After a few turns, a green jade screen appeared in front of him. He went around to the back and saw a smooth green stone blocking the way. This kind of thing could be broken with just a brush of the mysterious light. But Zhang Yan calculated carefully. At this time, he had already reached the depths of the mountain. He was already very close to Lu Mainyang's cave. If he made a slight movement and attracted the attention of the purple eyebrows Taoist above, it would not be worth it. He stepped forward and gently placed his hand on the rock, only to find that he couldn't move it. His eyes narrowed, and the profound chi in his abdomen, which was cultivated by the spirit comprehending contract, suddenly swelled. His strength instantly multiplied, and he slightly shook the rock, bending down. He reached down and gently lifted it up, then silently placed it to the side. At this time, there was a gray stone-paved alley in front of him. He walked in leisurely. Not long after, he reached the end. He looked up and saw a jade cover above. This must be the entrance to Lu Meinyang's inner chamber. He went down and put his hand on it. It was just a light touch. Before he could do anything, he heard a gentle voice from above saying, "Is it Junbai down there?" Zhang Yan's movement paused. His eyes flashed and he said, "Is it Demon King Lu?" "I am Zhang Yan. I came here on behalf of Daoist Lu." The voice said with surprise, "Are you the Daoist Zhang from Qinsang School mentioned in Jingting's letter?" "Yes, I am." Zhang Yan said in a deep voice, "Demon King Lu, I can't stay here for long. I will make a long story short. Was there anything done to your body?" Lu Meinyang was silent for a while, then sighed faintly and said, "Xiaomu used a talisman to stick to my head, and he used a forbidden golden nail to fix my golden core. Even the door of the quiet room was locked by the Yunyang golden lock. Zimei also has a restriction talisman in her hand. If he chanted the incantation and the golden nail fell, all my cultivation would be gone. It would be impossible for me to escape now." Hearing this, Zhang Yan's heart calmed down. As long as it was a restriction that required chanting the incantation, it would still take time. He had 2 core formation demon cultivators on his side, plus a small golden core cultivator. As long as he chose the right time, there was absolutely no chance for Zimei to cast the spell. He was so enthusiastic to save Lu Meinyang, but it was not that he didn't have any intentions. From Lu Junbai's words, he could tell that the disaster of Donghua continent was about to happen. The Lu siblings both had the intention of choosing a large sect to join, but they couldn't always choose one. Although he opened a mansion outside the sect, there was no one else in the clear nether heavenly lake who could support the situation other than him and Luo Xiao. If he recruited the siblings into the mansion after he reached the core formation, not only would his strength increase by another level, but he would also have Yan Jingting as an external aid. It should be known that this old man was very likely to step into the Yuanying realm within a few decades. The benefits could be said to be endless. Zhang Yan said, "Demon King Lu, I already know about my situation. I will call someone to rescue you now. However, I have one thing to tell you. If that Zimei Daoist asks you if you know Guolai, just say that you have offended Tao Zhenren in the past." Although Lu Meinyang didn't know why he did this, she knew there must be a deeper meaning, so she immediately said, "I understand." Zhang Yan said, "Demon King Lu, then I will take my leave first." Lu Meinyang was silent for a while before saying, "Fellow Daoist, if you see my daughter, please let her go this time. She is usually very obedient, and she was just muddle-headed for a moment." Zhang Yan shook his head and responded casually. He was not interested in what she said next. He turned around and walked out the way he came. In a moment, he was out of the cave. Seeing him come out, Lu Junbai hurriedly asked, "Fellow Daoist, have you seen my sister?" Zhang Yan nodded and sighed. Demon King Lu is indeed restrained by a restriction. Even his gold core was hit with a forbidden golden nail. Lu Junbai's expression couldn't help but change slightly. He said, "Then what should we do?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist, you said before that Zimei Daoist has a magic treasure to protect himself. How did you know?" Lu Junbai said resentfully, "Fellow Daoist, you don't know, but this person is extremely aggressive. After coming to the island for a few days, he has fought with me no less than 3 times. Therefore, I know that he has a magic treasure called Flowing Wind Ring. Once this thing is out, no matter how hard I try, I can't kill him within the ring. I was defeated several times because of this." Chapter 180. Drawing the snake out of its hole to stab Purple Eyebrows in the main hall, many graceful enchantresses were clapping their hands and dancing merrily. Purple Eyebrows' Taoist sat behind the table and watched for a while, but felt bored. He threw the wine cup down and waved his hand to drive them away. While he was bored, he heard a loud shout from outside, "Lu Junbai, get out, your master Gua is here to settle the score with you." Then there were bursts of explosions from outside, followed by collapsing walls and houses, and wails and screams. Obviously, someone was wantonly destroying the halls on the island. Purple Eyebrows' Taoist's expression changed, and there was a hint of excitement in his eyes. When Xiao Han went out, he told him to guard Lu Mainyang carefully. Knowing that he was impatient, Xiao Han ordered Yen Rong to find many enchantresses for him to entertain, and told him that even if the world outside was turned upside down, he only needed to guard the cave residence and was not allowed to go out at will. Therefore, when he heard the noise, he was patient at first, but after waiting for a while, it seemed that it was getting more and more lively outside, and he couldn't help but feel itchy. He thought to himself, I have the restriction talisman in hand, do I still need to be afraid of White Sky Demon King? Listening to the noise, this person will come to fight sooner or later, why not go out and have a look? With this thought in mind, he could no longer restrain himself. His body leaped up, and the smoke swirled, wrapping around him as he turned into a purple gas and flew out of the cave. He ascended to the clouds and hung in midair as he looked forward. He looked down from above, and naturally saw everything. On the island, birds were flying in panic, trees were falling, and houses were collapsing. Several magnificent temples that were originally repaired had become a terrible sight. A strong man was riding on a rock, controlling a green-scaled python that was about 100 feet long, which was made of black light, to rush back and forth, driving a group of small demons on the island to run around the mountain, laughing wildly from time to time. Zhang Yan chose Guolai to lure the enemy because he liked his temperament, and told him to ignore everything and just rush in. This arrangement was exactly what Guolai wanted, so he was excited to kill. At this time, Lu Junbai, who was hiding in the back of the mountain to watch the battle, twitched his eyes. Every time a house was destroyed, it was like a knife cutting his body. Purple Eyebrows' Taoist was overjoyed. He liked to fight all his life, and he was bored. At this moment, someone came to pick a fight, which was exactly what he liked, so he didn't ask at all, and shouted, "Where did this arrogant man come from?" "I, Xiao Lai, am coming to deal with you." He opened his mouth, and a purple smoke flew out, going straight to Guolai's face. At first, this smoke was just a little smoke, but later it became rolling purple smoke. Wherever it passed, the grass and trees immediately turned into flying ashes as soon as they touched it. Although Guolai was rampaging on the island, he always paid attention to the cave residents on the cliff. When he saw a cloud of purple smoke, he was already vigilant. At this moment, seeing the smoke, he recognized that it was the evil spirit in the Dan. With his little Jin Dan cultivation, it was not suitable to fight head-on, so he should avoid the limelight. However, he refused to admit defeat. With a shout, his chest bulged, and a wisp of evil spirit was forcibly lifted from the little Jin Dan in his abdomen, and he also opened his mouth and spat it out. His ball of baleful aura surged like raging flames and was red like mist. Its momentum wasn't the slightest bit weaker, and when it collided with the purple mist, the two miasma rolled together, causing crackling sounds to resound out like thunder. After fighting for a short while, the two miasma dispersed, and it was actually a tie. Purple Eyebrows Taoist originally saw that Guolai's cultivation was not as good as his, so he didn't use all his strength just now. He just wanted to force Guolai away, but he didn't expect that Guolai not only did not dodge, but also blocked his evil spirit. Purple Eyebrows Taoist's eyes couldn't help but light up. He jumped down from the cloud and rushed straight to Guolai. As he moved, he shook his shoulder, and suddenly a cloud of purple smoke like an umbrella appeared on top of his head. On the top of the cover, there was a white sword light that expanded and contracted, emitting bursts of sharp golden chi, as if it could fly out at any time to kill people. He shouted, "The person on the other side, tell me your name." Guolai laughed and said, "I'm Guolai's grandpa Gua." Guo Lai. Although it was the first time Purple Eyebrows Taoist came to Donghai, he had heard his adoptive father Xiaomu vaguely mention this name. After thinking carefully, he remembered that this person was Tao Zhenhong's eldest disciple, and his heart couldn't help but tighten. He already knew that his adoptive father came to Donghai to meet the agreement of his fellow Taoists to besiege Tao Zhenhong. Could it be that this person got the news and came in advance? At the thought of this, he broke out in a cold sweat. Tao Zhenhong was a cultivator in the third Yuanying realm, and he had never been defeated in Donghai for more than 20 years. If he came here, it was said that he was very likely to become a Dong Tianjinren in the next few years. If this person came here, even Xiaomu had to retreat, so Purple Eyebrows Taoist didn't dare to act rashly, and said cautiously, "Taoist Guo, what are you doing here?" Guo Lai said impatiently, "I'm here to find Lu Junbai and Lu Mainyang to resolve the grievances between them. Quickly call them out to see me." Hearing this, Purple Eyebrows Taoist was relieved, thinking that it was best that Guo Lai didn't come to find him. But at this moment, he didn't know whether Guo Lai had companions with him. Now he was alone, so he couldn't be reckless. Guo Lai wanted to take advantage of his fear. At this time, seeing that Purple Eyebrows Taoist didn't move, he knew that Purple Eyebrows Taoist had been fooled. How could he show mercy? With a wave of his hand, a light curtain rose behind him, and the sky crane and flying tiger were released. Two beams of mysterious light and the green-scaled python attacked Tao Zhenhong together. Purple Eyebrows Taoist snorted coldly. Although he was afraid of Tao Zhenhong, he was not afraid of Guo Lai. He made a gesture in his hand, and the flying sword on the top of his head turned and flashed 3 times in a row, easily cutting down the 3 demon spirits formed by the soul essence. Then he said, "Go." The flying sword turned again and slashed toward Guo Lai's head. Guo Lai was also shocked when he saw this. He wanted to dodge, but the sword light came too fast, so he hurriedly shook the light curtain and released the black tortoise's soul essence to protect himself. The sword light slashed upward and unexpectedly broke the black tortoise shell. The sword light was also blocked for a moment. It spun in the air and slashed toward Guo Lai's head again. Guo Lai knew the situation was not good. Although Purple Eyebrows Taoist's moves looked simple, he knew that Purple Eyebrows Taoist cultivated the profound sex cultivation method, and his realm was higher than Guo Lai's. Guo Lai couldn't fight him head-on, so he summoned the soul essence and demon spirit to fight with Purple Eyebrows Taoist. At the same time, he retreated, leading Purple Eyebrows Taoist to the place where Zhang Yan and the others had set up the ambush. Among the trees below, Zhang Yan and the others were hiding. He suddenly said to Lu Junbai, "That day, I saw you use the bronze mirror to capture people. What treasure is it?" Lu Junbai hesitated for a moment and then replied, "This mirror is called Mystique in the Barrier. It can capture all living things within 10 feet. As long as the head and torso are illuminated, they will be trapped in it. But if the cultivation of the person illuminated by the mirror is higher than mine, it will be useless." Zhang Yan asked again, "Can you capture the purple eyebrows?" Lu Junbai thought carefully and said with a little uncertainty, "The cultivation of the purple eyebrows is almost the same as mine. If I don't have the jade ring to protect me, I can give it a try." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "I'll deal with Purple Eyebrows' magic treasure. Once he shows an opening, the two of you can attack together. This matter involves Demon King Lu's life. If we can't capture him, we have to kill him to prevent any more variables." Lu Junbai listened and nodded solemnly. Zhang Yan looked at Monster Queen Junyue and said, "Monster Queen Jing, your cultivation is the highest among us. Whether you can save Demon King Lu or not depends on whether you can restrain the purple eyebrows." Monster Queen Junyue nodded and said softly, "Senior Sister Lu has always been taking care of me. I will do my best." Zhang Yan nodded. Seeing that Guo Lai had lured the Purple Eyebrows Taoist over, he whispered something to Guo Lai. Then he operated the true form wandering method and quietly hid his body. He rode the clear chi to the sky and hid in the clouds, waiting for an opportunity to strike. At this moment, Monster Queen Junyue saw that the two were above her and shouted, Senior Brother Gua, let me help you. The purple eyebrows Taoist looked over in surprise and saw a woman in silver armor and red muslin. He also knew that Tao Zhenhong had a female disciple named Wang Yingfang who was a demon cultivator. When he saw Monster Queen Junyue, he mistook her for this woman. He immediately felt that something was wrong and stopped paying attention to Guolai. Instead, he called back the flying sword, turned it in the air and slashed at Monster Queen Junyue. Monster Queen Junyue shouted and shook the spear in her hand. The tip of the spear accurately hit the flying sword. With a dang sound, the sword light was shaken off. With this gap, the purple eyebrows Taoist immediately took a few steps back, distancing himself from the two. He took out a jade bracelet from his sleeve and threw it above his head. The jade bracelet was as big as a bowl and was decorated with dragon patterns. As soon as it was in the air, a white light sprinkled down. Seeing that the bracelet was about to protect the purple eyebrows, Zhang Yan, who had been hiding on the side, saw the opportunity. With a thought, a green light flew out from the primal aperture between his eyebrows. One could vaguely recognize that it was a small and exquisite jade token. It pressed on the jade bracelet and instantly froze it in the air, preventing the spiritual qi from flowing out. Seeing the white light falling, the purple eyebrows Taoist was originally at ease. He didn't expect that it would disappear just above his head. He suddenly panicked. Below, Lu Junbai saw the opportunity and immediately turned into a white light and rushed forward. He took out an ancient bronze mirror as big as a golden basin and pointed it at the purple eyebrows Taoist. Not good. At this time, the purple eyebrows Taoist saw Lu Junbai and immediately knew that he had been fooled. Ah! With a loud cry, he shook off the killing intent on his body with all his might to protect his body. When the mirror light landed on his body, it only caused his body to involuntarily shake a few times. Surprisingly, he was not sucked away. Seeing that he couldn't take away the person, Lu Junbai was anxious. He looked at the opponent with a grin and seemed to reach in to take the restriction talisman. The flying sword above his head was spinning. He immediately knew that it was not good, but it was too late to use other methods. He could only desperately activate the bronze mirror. Zhang Yan, who was hiding in the sky, saw this. With a thought, a sword light flew out from between his eyebrows and slashed down. The flying sword seemed to have sensed it and raised its head to meet it. With a zeng sound, the sword pill was bounced away. At this time, Monster Queen Junyue had already turned around. Her eyes were wide open, and with a shout, she turned the magic weapon in her hand. A red light flashed and crossed dozens of feet to stab the long spear. The purple eyebrows Taoist had no magic treasure to protect himself, and he didn't have time to escape from the mirror light. The flying sword was tricked by Zhang Yan just now, so he could only watch the spear's shadow pass through his chest. He grabbed the spear shaft and glared angrily. He knew that he was going to die, so he shouted and spat a mouthful of blood on the flying sword. Everyone thought that he was going to fight back before he died, so they all stepped back subconsciously. However, the flying sword that was stained with blood did not fall, but flew up, pierced the sky in the blink of an eye, and disappeared without a trace. At first, Lu Junbai was a little confused, but then he seemed to think of something. His face turned pale and he exclaimed, "Not good, this person is using his blood as a sacrifice to inform Xiaomu of his age." As soon as this sentence came out, except for Zhang Yan, the faces of everyone present changed greatly. If Xiaomu's age was known and he rushed over, with the cultivation of the Yuanying cultivator, no one here would be able to survive. Chapter 181. Crossing the sea and fighting the waves. Purple eyebrows Taoist had an unyielding temperament. After spitting out a mouthful of blood essence, he was afraid that his Jindan would be stolen after his death, so he immediately screamed and said, "My adoptive father will kill you all for me." He suddenly poured a mouthful of primordial qi down and shattered the Jindan in his abdomen. His body exploded into a cloud of blood mist, and his original spirit drifted away. He died on the spot. When Zhang Yan saw this scene, he secretly felt that it was a pity. If he could let the 9 subduing magic slip absorb this person's blood essence, his divine contract might be able to reach another level. Although Monster Queen Junyue's spear pierced through Purple Eyebrows Taoist's chest, in fact, she deliberately avoided the vital parts and did not really kill him. She only intended to capture him alive, otherwise, this stab would have killed him. What she did was not necessarily wrong. After all, she was just a helper invited by Lu Junbai and had no hatred with the Shao family, so there was no need to make a grudge. Secondly, holding this person as a hostage could make the other party a little more scrupulous. At that time, if Purple Eyebrows Taoist was willing to beg for mercy and take the initiative to hand over the talisman that restrained Lu Mainyang, he could have kept his life. However, he was too impatient and impetuous. He felt that these people would definitely not let him go after what he had done to Lu Mainyang. If he fell into their hands, they might even retaliate. Therefore, he would rather kill himself than be humiliated and tortured. Seeing that this person was so unyielding that they could not even catch him alive, Lu Junbai's face also became ugly. On this Egret Island, White Sky Demon King Lu Mainyang had been operating for a long time, and the cave residence was covered with big and small formations. However, her daughter Yen Rong had told Xiaomu all the ways to advance and retreat. For the convenience of entering and exiting, and for fear of leaving some unknown backups, Xiaomu had forcibly demolished many formations. Only a few were left, which was of no use to him. Now there was no place on this island that could be relied on. If the flying sword was taken away, if Xiaomu came back to seek revenge, where could they escape to on this vast ocean? A trace of regret appeared on Monster Queen Junyue's pretty face. If she had been ruthless earlier, how could this happen? Guo Lai looked indifferent and said with a smile, "If we can't beat him, we can just leave. At the worst, we can just split up and split up." Zhang Yan remained calm and decisively said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, please rescue Demon King Lu as soon as possible. We'll rush back to our Dragon Nation's Ark. With our combined strength and the protection of the restriction, we can even resist the fierce attacks of a nascent soul cultivator for a while." Lu Junbai's spirits were refreshed as if he'd found a life-saving straw, and he nodded repeatedly. He didn't have the time to say anything before hastily running into the abode. Not long after, he carried out a white-clothed, black-haired woman. She was panting and her face was pale. She looked weak and weak. Demon Monarch Junyu rushed forward and asked, "Senior Sister Lu, how are you? Are you Junior Sister Jing?" "I'm fine." The woman opened her eyes and said weakly, "I have taken off the talisman and pulled out the golden nails. It's just that my sister had a fierce battle with Xiaomu and was restrained for a long time. She is a little weak, but she will recover after some rest." Lu Mainyang forced herself to raise her head and looked at Zhang Yan, who was not far away. She said softly, "This is fellow Taoist Zhang, right? I can't thank you enough, Zhang Yan quickly stepped forward and cupped his hands to stop her. "Monster King Lu, you are too polite. This is not a good place to talk. We should leave as soon as possible." Lu Mainyang nodded and glanced at the surroundings of the island with a slight sense of loss. She seemed to be a little reluctant to leave. She patted Lu Junbai's shoulder and said, "Little brother, listen to fellow Taoist Zhang." "Sister," Lu Junbai replied, "you can climb steadily." He leaped up and turned into a white rainbow, and in an instant he was on top of the cloud. The others also flew up into the sky and left the island. A few hundred miles away, Xiao Han stood on a small island with his hands behind his back. He looked at the black mountain in front of him. He wore a tall hat and a wide belt. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Coupled with his handsome appearance, he looked indescribably elegant. Beside him stood a slender girl with long sleeves and a picturesque face. Her beautiful eyes were looking at him with deep affection. From time to time, the two of them would whisper to each other, and from time to time, they would laugh. Not far away from them, a Daoran was lying on the clouds. His eyes were half closed, but there was a flash of lightning in his eyes. However, at this moment, a white light flashed in the sky. A flying sword pierced through the clouds. The old Taoist furrowed his brows and waved his hand. The flying sword fell to the ground. He used 2 fingers to hold it and examined the qi of blood on it. After calculating with his fingers, he sighed and said, "Shao Lai, oh Shao Lai, you didn't listen to me, so you died and your Tao disappeared." Shao Han also noticed the abnormality. He pushed the girl away and asked, "Fourth uncle, what's the matter?" The old Taoist priest indifferently said, "Your sworn brother, Shao Lai, was killed." "What?" Shao Han was shocked and angry. He said, "Who dared to kill a member of the Shao clan?" Daoren said expressionlessly, "This matter must have something to do with Lu Mainyang." The girl was shocked. She quickly grabbed Shao Han's arm and said anxiously, "Brother Shao, mother was locked in the quiet room. How could she do such a thing? Did senior make a mistake?" Shao Han waved his sleeve and broke free from her hand. He said coldly, "Why would my fourth uncle speak nonsense?" Seeing his expression change, the girl didn't dare to say anything. Her eyes were red and she looked wronged. Shao Han coldly snorted and raised his hand to straighten his belt. He took 2 steps forward and bowed to the old Taoist and said, "Fourth uncle, please avenge my sworn brother." Shao Mushui's gaze was cold as he said, "I warned Shao Lai a long time ago that he was courting death if he didn't listen to me, and it has nothing to do with anyone else. If you come to beg me, you have to follow the rules. I promised fifth brother that you can ask me for 3 things. I won't ask for anything else. Escorting you to the Eastern Sea is the first. You begged me to take down Lu Mainyang is the second. Now you're begging me for help. This is the third. After these 3 things are done, even if your life is in danger, I won't help you. You have to think carefully." Shao Han knew that people like his fourth uncle, who were Yuanying enlightened masters, valued their own lives. If it wasn't for the fact that the matter involved karma, or if there was a great benefit in improving one's cultivation, he wouldn't help a junior disciple. However, Shao Han thought that after this trip to the Eastern Sea, when he returned home, he would be able to build his gold core. In the future, he could look for a master with a profound cultivation base to be his apprentice, and he wouldn't need to bother this indifferent fourth uncle anymore. So, he gritted his teeth and said, "Shao Lai's sworn brother and I were good friends. Now that he was murdered, if I don't avenge him, where would the reputation of the Shao clan go? Fourth uncle, please avenge my sworn brother and kill the person who harmed him." After he finished speaking, he bowed deeply. Although his words sounded dignified, his real reason was not so. It was a pity that Shao Lai had died, but the relationship between the 2 of them was not that deep. However, he could not even avenge the death of someone close to him. In the future, once he established his own clan, who in the clan would want to rely on him? Moreover, he faintly felt that this matter wasn't that simple. Lu Junbai hadn't returned yet, and this matter seemed to be related to someone else. If he could solve this once and for all, it would be the best. Shao Mu looked at him and said slowly, "Have you thought it through?" Shao Han bowed again and said seriously, "Fourth uncle, please make your move. Kill every single one of them." Shao Mu nodded and stood up from the cloud. As his Taoist robe fluttered, a ray of light rose and disappeared in a flash. Zhang Yan and the others had already used their flying lights to the limit. When they saw the figure of the Dragon Country's ship appear in front of them, they all relaxed a little. But at this moment, a thunderclap came from above the clouds. A cloud followed, and on it sat a purple-robed Daoren. He saw that the 5 people in front of him were flying away, and there was a disdainful look in his eyes. He straightened his palm and muttered something. After a while, he gently grabbed and released his hand, and a cloud of clear air fell. In an instant, wind and thunder rose from the flat ground, and a gust of wind rolled up thousands of tons of seawater, forming a circle of huge waves that surrounded Zhang Yan and the others. His cold voice seemed to come from above the 9 heavens. "You are just fish in a shallow pond. Where can you go?" Lu Junbai looked at the towering waves around him that rose high but didn't fall down, and then looked at Daoren who was chasing from the sky. He smiled bitterly, knowing that he couldn't escape today. He gently helped Lu Mainyang down from his back, and said to Zhang Yan, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my sister later." Zhang Yan nodded slightly. Lu Junbai turned to Guo Lai and said, "Fellow Taoist Guo, life and death are at stake. We have no choice but to advance." Guo Lai laughed loudly. "Other than my master, I have never fought with a Yuanying cultivator before. Today, I will have a taste of it." Although Monster Monarch Jun Yu looked delicate, she knew that there was no way out in this situation. If she didn't fight, she would die. With a shout, her body turned into a rainbow light, and she was the first to rush up. The divine weapon in her hand stabbed towards Doran's head. Doran was expressionless. He stretched out a finger, and a thin white gas gushed out from his fingertip, easily blocking the silver spear. Lu Junbai knew that the three of them would only have a chance of survival if they worked together. When Monster Monarch Jun Yu rushed out, he followed suit. However, before he could even get close, the old Taoist flicked his sleeve and a gust of wind swept him in. In an instant, he felt dizzy. He spun around 100 times, and felt weak all over. After an unknown period of time, he bit the tip of his tongue, and with a loud cry, he revealed his true form. An egret with a crest on its head, yellow eyes, black beak, and a body of white feathers broke through the smoke. It let out a clear cry, and turned to peck at Doran's head. The old Taoist sneered coldly, "How dare a coward like you show off?" Just as he was about to attack, he frowned and dodged the spear. The cloud of smoke fell from his fingertip, and blocked Monster Monarch Jun Yu's next attack. Although Guo Lai was a step slower, he was still on top of the cloud. He shook off the mysterious light, took out a talisman, and slapped it on the light screen behind him. Then, a strand of essence chi rushed out of the light screen behind him, and with a deafening roar, a ferocious-looking white ape rushed out of the light screen. The old Taoist had a cold smile on his face. He flipped his palm, and with a crackling sound, a bolt of purple lightning struck towards Guo Lai. This ball of purple lightning came too quickly. Guo Lai didn't even have time to react. However, the moment it touched his body, a jade token flew out from between his eyebrows. This jade token released a circle of light, and there was a talisman faintly visible within it. The talisman stretched and shrank, and it swallowed the purple lightning. Daoran frowned, and said, "It's Tao Zhenhong's virtue-protecting charm token." Guo Lai calmed down after escaping death, and shouted, "Everyone, kill! Let's kill this Daoran." Monster Monarch Jun Yu and Lu Junbai rushed forward without a word. Daoran saw the three of them coming at him together, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He shouted, and a ray of light shot out from the top of his head. The light spread out like a fan, and in a split second, the clouds and smoke were dispersed. In the middle of the light was a Yuanying statue, and its body was covered in light gold. Its face was the same as Xiao Mu's, and it held a horsetail whisk in its left hand, and a dharma plate in its right. Under its feet, it stood on the wind and clouds, and it looked dignified and solemn. It looked down from above, and said with a thunderous voice, "A few core formation cultivators dare to fight with me?" Chapter 182. Raging waves, rolling snake, swallowing elephant. In the state of Yuanying, one could be called a perfected person. One could be called a Taoist master with a lifespan of 1,000 years. Their every movement was accompanied by magical power, and their bodies were filled with great power. Previously, Xiao Muzhui did not put Lu Junbai and the others in his eyes, but now that he saw the three of them acting recklessly, he laughed in his heart and released his newly formed nascent soul. As soon as this Yuanying was released, the spiritual vigor within a radius of 10 miles was stirred up. The sea churned and the wind blew violently. Colorful lights flashed in the clouds as if they were dyed by the sunset. Her body emitted an unparalleled power, causing the breath of the three of them to stagnate. Demon Queen Yuanying had the highest cultivation level among the three. Although she looked weak, she had cultivated in the Dharma of Strength path. Her body was like a piece of steel and she was not afraid of ordinary dharma. Therefore, she stretched her arm and shook the end of her silver spear. There was an explosive sound in the air and the spear flashed like a poisonous python, rushing towards her opponent again. Xiao Mujui's eyes were filled with disdain. He raised his nascent soul and gently flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand, blocking Demon Monarch Junyue and her spear to the side. Monster Monarch Junyu felt a tenacious force pulling her to the side. She couldn't help but take a few steps forward. Just as she was about to retrieve her spear, the nascent soul's expression suddenly turned solemn, and a thunderous roar rang out. Demon Queen Junyue felt a boom in her head. She felt dizzy as if she was hit by a heavy blow. She could not hold the divine weapon steadily and her body swayed. Before she could steady herself, Yuanying pointed her finger and purple lightning fell. Demon Monarch Junyu barely managed to block the lightning with her silver spear. Her body trembled violently as blood flowed from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Finally, with a loud boom, the divine weapon in her hand was knocked out of her hand. She was also sent flying dozens of feet away. Her footsteps became unsteady and she looked as if she was about to fall off the clouds. Seeing that she would die on the spot after a few more bolts of purple lightning, a black shadow appeared above Yuanying's head. Lu Junbai flapped his wings and dived down, pecking at Yuanying's eyes. Yuanying's face remained expressionless. With a wave of the horsetail whisk in her hand, it transformed into thousands of strands of hair like silver threads that curled upwards and immediately bound Lu Junbai. No matter how hard Lu Junbai struggled, he was unable to break free. Xiaomu snorted coldly and said, "It just so happens that I lack a spirit bird to guard my abode, or else I won't spare you." Yuanying stretched out her hand and patted Lu Junbai's head, and then threw him on top of the cloud. Just like that, he lost his consciousness. Xiaomu shook his hand and put him into his sleeve. A loud roar resounded in the sky. A white ape tore apart the smoke barrier in front of the nascent soul, and brazenly rushed in. But before it could reach the nascent soul, it heard a series of thunderclaps. Then, purple lightning flashed in a disorderly manner like a snake, and it was shredded into pieces in the blink of an eye. Even that mass of essence dispersed in the air was extinguished under the illumination of the clear light. Yuanying flipped her palm and launched several palm thunders at Guolai. Even with the protective charm, Guolai could not withstand it. He screamed repeatedly and retreated hundreds of feet away. On the other side, Demon Queen Junyue finally caught her breath. She activated her Xian Qi and immediately healed her injuries. She raised her head and glared at Xiaomu. She opened her cherry lips and let out a piercing cry towards the sky. Impressively, she revealed her true form of a great demon. A 10-feet-long golden-crowned brocaded pheasant flew into the sky. Its feathers were like raging flames. It had a blue back and brown feet. Its long tail was bright and eye-catching. As it swayed, it carried a misty smoke. With a flap of its wings, it flew over 100 feet and a pair of dark brown sharp claws clawed towards Yuanying. Seeing her gorgeous feathers, Xiaomu was not surprised but happy. He said, "Good, I've taken Elder Qiu's demon-subduing ring. Daoren is still lacking a mount. But you have delivered yourself to me." He took out a dazzling hoop from his sleeve and tossed it forward. The hoop spun in the air and the golden talismans within it flickered wildly. 8 positions and 8 gates appeared. As if it knew the way, it fell down and wrapped itself around Monster Monarch Junyu's neck. It then tightened and shrunk. Monster Monarch Junyu couldn't help but let out a miserable cry and fell to the ground. She lay at Xiao Mujui's feet and could no longer move. When the 4 of them made their move, Zhang Yan supported Lu Mainyang and watched the battle from the side. As for Xiao Mu, he already had the Dark North Heavenly Sword avatar in his hand. Therefore, he already had the intention to plot against him. However, he was meticulous and did not dare to be careless when facing the Yuanying cultivator. If he missed in one strike, wouldn't he lose his life? Therefore, he had to leave a path of retreat for himself. Originally, he wanted to rely on Dragon Country's big ship and think of a way to incite these core formation cultivators to attack Xiaomu together while he looked for an opportunity to injure the enemy. If he could kill this person on the spot, not only would he get rid of a huge threat, these core formation cultivators would also be completely tied to him. Although he was currently trapped and could not reach Dragon Country's big ship, it was not that he had no other options. At worst, he could summon the demon treasury and hide in it. Even if Xiaomu could catch up to him, he would not be able to do anything to him for the time being. When the three of them besieged Xiaomuzhui, he had tried to activate the purple light between his eyebrows, but he had a feeling that he was still lacking something. Even if he were to use this sword, he might not be able to hurt his opponent. As for what it was, he had a vague idea in his mind, but he could not quite grasp it. At this moment, Lu Mainyang, who was standing beside him, had recovered some of her strength. She saw that after Xiaomu came out of the Yuanying, he either subdued or repelled the people. She knew that it was futile for her to go up. She gritted her teeth and grabbed Zhang Yan's wrist, saying, "Fellow Daoist ran around to save my life. It is my Lu family's business to rely on you to escape. How can I let fellow Daoist lose his life today? Even if I die, I won't let fellow Daoist be harmed." As soon as she finished speaking, she did not wait for Zhang Yan to speak. She pointed with her slender finger, and a jade hairpin with a phoenix flew out from her hair. It collided with the mist in front of them, creating a path with a boom. She hugged Zhang Yan and turned into a magnificent rainbow, flying straight to Dragon Country's big ship. With the two demons captured and Lu Mainyang gone, Guolai saw that the situation was not good, so he also turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the sea in the blink of an eye. Xiaomu hesitated for a moment. Although he came here to besiege Tao Zhenhong, it was not the time to turn hostile. If Tao Zhenhong came to him because of the death of his disciples, he would not be able to stop him. He thought to himself, "I'll let you go for now. It won't be too late to deal with you after I deal with Tao Zhenhong with the other Taoists. Right now, Zhang Yan and Lu Mainyang can't escape." Thinking of this, he shook his shoulder and put away his yuanying. He turned into a beam of mist and chased after Zhang Yan. In fact, Lu Mainyang hadn't recovered much of her primordial qi. She had just released her Dharma treasures and flew for a while, so she was already exhausted. Seeing that the ship of Qi Dragon was right in front of her, she bit the tip of her tongue and flew even faster. When she reached the deck of the ship, she relaxed and fainted. Zhang Yan hurriedly supported her body. At this moment, he had already felt the fierce murderous aura coming from behind him. The sword pill between his eyebrows twitched uneasily. However, this small movement was like a beam of light that illuminated his sea of consciousness. His previous doubts were suddenly cleared up. So that was it. He turned back to look at the fierce beam of mist. Holding Lu Mainyang, he jumped up and turned into a beam of light that went straight to the treasure pavilion. However, he purposely paused when he moved. Xiaomu saw that Zhang Yan was about to hide in the huge ship. Although he did not recognize Dragon Country's big ship, he knew that this kind of ship must have extremely powerful restrictions. He knew that if he was one step late, he would not be able to take down this junior. Therefore, he shouted and activated all the magic power in his body. He flashed in the air and in almost a breath's time, he followed Zhang Yan into the treasure pavilion. Feeling the figure behind him, Zhang Yan felt a pressure from between life and death. He shouted in his heart, "Senior North Sea, help me." As if it had heard his call, the purple sword light suspended in the space between its eyebrows suddenly trembled, and with a whistling sound, a cold sword light that could tear apart heaven and earth instantly broke free from its shackles, and brazenly rushed out like an ancient fierce beast. Just as Xiaomuzhui rushed in, the sneer on his face suddenly froze and was replaced by an expression of extreme fear. He let out a roar and his nascent soul shook off the light and appeared in front of Xiaomuzhui to block the attack while he himself retreated. His line of sight was obscured by a brilliant sword ray that seemed to be able to cut through everything. The mighty nascent soul was split into two by this sword ray from head to tail as if it was soft mud. Then, it rushed to his front and disappeared in a flash. Xiao Mu's body stiffened, and a line of blood appeared between his eyebrows, from which blood slowly seeped out. He glared venomously at Zhang Yan, then silently clutched his chest, turning and stumbling as he ran outside. When he reached the deck, he soared into the clouds, swaying as he floated off into the distance. Zhang Yan walked out of the treasure's pavilion, his eyes narrowing slightly. He finally understood that this clone of the Dark North sword would only be controlled by him at full strength when he was truly in a life-or-death situation. Otherwise, even if he did use it, its power would not be apparent. This Xiao Mu was worthy of being a Yuanying cultivator. Even though he had been heavily injured, he still relied on his profound cultivation to hold on and not die. This was also because Zhang Yan's cultivation was not high enough, and he was unable to completely control the power of the Dark North sword. Otherwise, that chop would definitely have taken Xiao Mu's life. However, after this attempt, he had already understood the temperament of this sword clone. If it was the next time, he would know how to act. Looking at his opponent's figure, Zhang Yan laughed coldly. At this point, how could he allow this person to escape alive? He did not chase after him, but instead turned into a streak of light and entered the ship. He sat down on the first floor of the treasure's pavilion, took out the talisman, and with a roar, the 36 dragon-climbing pillars of the dragon country's great arc began to move at the same time, giving rise to a huge wave as he charged towards his opponent. Xiao Mu was currently flying forward with great difficulty. This time, the Yuanying had been shattered, and his hundreds of years of cultivation had been directly destroyed by Zhang Yan. It was only because of the secret technique of his clan, the true calming jade, that he was able to preserve his life and hang on to a single strand of Xiantian Yuan Qi, that he did not die on the spot. However, at the moment, he could barely use a lightning palm. He thought bitterly in his heart, if this Zhang Yan recklessly chases after me, I will definitely teach him a lesson. If he doesn't come, after I recover from my injuries and come out of seclusion, I will tear this person into 1,000 pieces. Just as he was gnashing his teeth, he heard the rumbling of thunder behind him. Looking back, he could not help but be scared out of his wits. The dragon country's great ark's huge body was flowing with restrictions, breaking through the huge waves and rushing towards him with the momentum of a divine mountain. He did not expect Zhang Yan to be so ferocious. At this moment, he could not care about anything else. With a roar, he desperately tried to dodge. However, his injuries were too severe, and it was already too late for him to dodge. The dragon head horn in front of the dragon country's great arc slammed into his back with great force. This collision was like a mountain, causing smoke to come out of his mouth and nose, and blood to spurt out crazily. The jade pendant on his chest also cracked with a ka sound, and his body fell straight into the water. Zhang Yan frowned. Seeing that this person was still not dead, he also made up his mind. He jumped into the water, and the blue cloud mystic light spread out, separating the waves. With a wave of his sleeve, a 6-story treasure tower flew out, and with a flash, he turned into a light and went above the 3rd story. With a hung sound, the devil treasury moved, and with just one move, it caught up to Xiao Mu, aiming at him and ramming again. A muffled sound came from the sea. After suffering the collision just now, Xiao Mu's bones were already all broken, and his internal organs were broken. Now that he was injured again, he screamed, and the jade pendant on his chest broke with a pa sound. Golden light spurted out from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, and he instantly died on the spot. An original spirit floated up from the corpse, but it quickly flew towards the northwest direction, as if it was going to escape. However, it only flew for a few hundred feet, celestial sounds came from the sky, and a crystal-clear jade slip flew out from the devil treasury. In a flash, it caught up to him, circled around him, and sucked him in. Chapter 183. After absorbing the original spirit, the 9-absorption devil slip didn't stop. With a flip, it lay on top of Xiao Mu's body and shuttled back and forth a few times, sucking up all the essence blood. With a clear sound, it turned into a dazzling light and went to the dragon country's big boat to find the broken Yuanying and swallowed it as well. The slip's actions were equivalent to swallowing an entire Yuanying cultivator. After going around a few more times and seeing that there was nothing left to swallow, the slip's body shook and the sound of a bell could be heard. Its whole body was filled with clear air and emitted a brilliant glow. When Zhang Yan returned to the dragon boat, it didn't wait for him to raise his hand and let out a happy cry and went into the space between his eyebrows. Zhang Yan's eyes shone with a strange light. This jade slip seemed to be tame in the past, but it was actually arrogant and unruly. It would be fine if he didn't take it, but if he touched it, a violent and bloodthirsty aura would surge and try to influence his mind. Moreover, regardless of whether he was willing or not, it would spit out the essence qi. However, it wasn't like that today. It was much more obedient than usual. He focused his mind on the acupoint and saw that the magic slip was floating there without any signs of movement. Vaguely, it seemed to have lost some of its fierceness and gained a hint of spirituality. On the surface, it looked more and more like an immortal treasure. He thought that the essence qi absorbed this time should be enough for him to push the divine contract to another level, but now was not the time to calm down and cultivate. At this time, he heard a soft sigh. He turned his head and saw that Lu Mainyang had slowly woken up. She opened her eyes and saw Zhang Yan at first glance. She immediately sat up and looked around. Her tense expression relaxed and she asked, "Fellow Zhang, has Xiaomu left?" This demoness queen's almond-shaped eyes were slightly frightened. Her robe was messy, her black hair fell like a waterfall, and her skin was as white as porcelain. At this moment, she bit her lower lip with her silver teeth and pressed her hand on her chest. There was a natural seductive expression on her face. She was worthy of the name Mainyang. Zhang Yan didn't seem to notice the flirtatious expression on her face as he smiled lightly. He said, "Demon King Lu, don't worry. I have the help of a master in my sect. This person will not come to disturb us again." Lu Mainyang was stunned at first. After pondering over the meaning behind Zhang Yan's words, her beautiful eyes lit up and she nodded. He was completely relieved. He didn't mention this matter again. She didn't doubt his words. She guessed that a true disciple like Zhang Yan, who was in charge of his own territory, would probably be like Xiao Han, protected by a powerful figure in the sect. As for why this person didn't come out to save Lu Junbai and the others, she didn't find it strange. If the masters of Qinsang school didn't involve the lives of their own disciples, they wouldn't have come out to save them. Presumably, it wouldn't show itself easily, much less pay attention to demon cultivators like them. Zhang Yan took out 2 talismans that were about a finger thick from his sleeve and said, "These 2 items contain Daozhang Lu and Demon King Jing. My cultivation is shallow, so I can't think of anything. Demon King Lu's magic power is profound, so he should be able to undo the restriction." Before he boarded the ship, he had already taken the sleeve from Xiaomu's corpse. After a rough search, he found that there were quite a lot of things inside, but with his current cultivation, he didn't dare to act rashly. Who knew if there were any powerful restrictions placed on them? Since he already got them, he might as well take his time to sort them out in the future. Other than that, there were these 2 jade tokens. The original figures of Lu Junbai and Jing Miaojuan appeared on each of the tokens. With just one look, it was obvious that these 2 people were imprisoned in these items. Lu Mainyang stood up and raised her hand to receive it. She gently stroked it for a while, then sighed softly and put it down. A look of distress appeared on her face. The jade token that Xiaomu used seems to be the Nanhua sect's sealing talisman. I can't do anything about it. Among the 10 great mystic sects of Donghua continent, Nanhua sect was the most feared by demon cultivators, followed by Qinsang and Shaoqing sect. This was because these sects were extremely good at subduing demons, and most of their techniques were focused on how to restrain demon cultivators. This restriction was not something she could easily undo. Zhang Yan pondered for a while and said, "Don't worry, Demon King Lu. I know someone who can undo this restriction." Hearing that, Lu Mainyang hurriedly bowed and said, "Please give me some pointers, Demon King Lu." Seeing this, Zhang Yan stretched out his hand to help her up and said, Demon King Lu, there's no need to be so polite. Do you still remember fellow Taoist Guo Lai? This person is the disciple of Tao Xinren, Tao Xinren. Tao Xinren was originally cultivating under Nanhua sect and only left later. His cultivation is also above Xiao Mu's, so there's a high chance that he can undo this restriction. Joy appeared in Lu Mainyang's beautiful eyes, but then she said worriedly, I have no contact with Tao Xinren, nor do we have any friendship. Why would he be willing to help me? Zhang Yan smiled and said, before coming here, I promised fellow Taoist Guo a benefit. If I talk to him about this matter, I believe he will give me some face. Lu Mainyang bowed again and said seriously, if you can get Tao Xinren to help you, fellow Taoist, if you need anything in the future, please don't hesitate to order me. Zhang Yan smiled and said, fellow Taoist is too polite. I just saw fellow Taoist Guo escape during the chaos. With his temper, he won't leave easily. Why don't we wait here for a few days? If he doesn't come, I'll go get the 4 marquises water and then go find him. Lu Mainyang nodded and said, as you say. She was a gentle person, and she didn't have a mind of her own, so she didn't have any objections. Zhang Yan said again, there are many courtyards and pavilions on this dragon country ship. Fellow Taoist can choose one to cultivate in. After saying that, he excused himself and returned to the treasure pavilion. Sitting in the quiet room, he activated the restriction and with a thought, the 9 absorption demons subduing slip in his acupoints trembled and released the essence within it. Previously, when Zhang Yan was cultivating, he had activated the jade slip and received only a few strands of essence qi. But now, it was unprecedentedly plentiful. Moreover, it directly entered his acupoints without a trace of waste. He felt the qi flow surging towards him, and in an instant, it flowed through his entire body. He sat down and calmed his mind, emptied his mind, and waited for the essence to settle down. Then, he began to circulate his xian qi according to the mind-comprehending contract. In less than 4 hours, all the acupoints in his body started to move together, pushing his xian qi up. At this time, a faint layer of gold and bronze appeared on the surface of his body, but after a moment, it disappeared. Then, a hazy mist of light came out from his mouth and nose, turning into hundreds of faintly visible flood dragons that circled around him. As the circulation of the mantra became smoother and smoother, the mass of essence qi in his abdomen gradually warmed up. It swallowed and spat out, advancing and retreating back and forth. After a few breaths, there was a swooshing sound, as if there was a mass of heavy water swaying inside, causing his body to gently sway. After another 4 hours, the mass of essence shook and leaped up. Zhang Yan opened his eyes, opened his mouth, and spat out a mass of white light. The flood dragons were like pearls chasing after pearls, circling and dancing around the white light. Every time they circled around, a strand of it would disappear. At the end, there was only a mass of qi circling around. At this time, this mass of qi was like lightning, flashing 3 times between bright and dark. It drilled into his Shinkei acupoint and turned back into a mass of essence, like a statue of a deity sitting inside. That wisp of qi also followed, but it went into his spine. Zhang Yan only felt a numbing sensation from his joints to the jade pillow. A series of cracking sounds came from his ears, and he unconsciously straightened his body. At this time, there was a qi pushing out from his abdomen, colliding with the 12-story building. His throat was wide open, and he couldn't help but raise his head and open his mouth. A gust of white qi pierced through the air, more than 30 feet in length. There was a faint light on it, and a muffled sound of thunder exploded in the air. The rumbling sound lasted for a long time, and just now, it dissipated. Zhang Yan slowly inhaled and exhaled. After repeating this a few times, he stabilized the qi that was floating around his body. This time, there was actually a lot of essence in the 9 absorption magic slip, but he was not greedy. He circulated the mental cultivation method a few times, and returned the excess essence. At this time, he felt refreshed, and the strength in his body was endless. His toes lightly touched the ground, and without the support of his qi, he easily stood up. His heart moved, and he took out the beast-faced broadsword from his sleeve. He held the hilt in his hand, and waved it a few times without moving his upper body. He felt that the heavy-duty divine weapon was now as light as a straw in his hand. He turned his mind and silently examined himself. He knew that he had already stepped into the second realm of the complete spirit contract, and was actually not much weaker than his Tai Xian light. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This method was indeed worthy of being called the devil sex method. As long as there was the essence that was plundered, he would be able to improve. However, the more he cultivated this method, the more dangerous it would be, and the harder it would be to cultivate. It was just that after reaching the second realm, he didn't know how much stronger his physical body was than before. With a thought, a mysterious light burst out from the top of his head, and the golden fire light fell down, brushing against his right hand. He felt a slight pain in his arm, and there was an ear-piercing sound, as if two divine weapons were rubbing against each other. He quickly retracted the mysterious light, and saw that a shallow layer of his skin and flesh was scraped off, but there was no blood flowing out. After circulating the method, he immediately recovered. Seeing this scene, he was both surprised and satisfied. His golden firelight was extremely overbearing, and when it brushed down, even the 9 Demon King's doppelganger would have a layer of blood and skin scraped off. Compared to it, he seemed to be slightly better. With this method to protect himself, he wouldn't be afraid of ordinary magical weapons. He let out a long breath, and kept the divine weapon. He sat down again, circulating the method, and absorbed the remaining essence in the tip of the hair into his acupuncture points. After some time, he seemed to have sensed something, and he raised his head with a smile. He turned into a ray of light, and went out of the treasure pavilion. When he reached the deck, he stood with his hands behind his back, and smiled, "Fellow Taoist Gua, why are you in such a sorry state?" A burly man with charred hair and beard was lying on the deck, gasping for breath. The peng bird beside him, however, did not have the slightest bit of hair on its body, and it was hilarious to see. Guo Lai shook his head and raised his hand to slap a few more times. Only then did he prop himself up and said with lingering fear, "That old man Zhao's palm thunder is so powerful, it almost made me lose my life." He then said in annoyance, "This time, my demon spirit essence was destroyed by that old man, and even the white ape spirit essence that I shamelessly asked my master to give me was destroyed. This deal is really a loss." How could Zhang Yan not understand the meaning in his words? He smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to complain, I won't go back on my words. When I get the moon leaf Xuanzhen grass to make elixir water, I'll give it to you, and I'll add some spirit shells as compensation." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.